My fiancée and her best friend were out drinking and partying, making a reckless bet on whose boyfriend would show up first to drive them home. Whoever's man arrived last had to foot the entire bill. In the end, the ultimate loser was none other than Xie Waning. Even as the clock struck 2 a.m., I still hadn't shown up to pick her up. The runner-up who narrowly avoided losing was Song Ruan. She playfully patted Xie Waning on the shoulder, offering her a look of pure pity as she bragged. My boyfriend just finished his overtime shift, girls. I'm heading out first. Song Ruan's boyfriend cast a deeply meaningful, lingering glance at Xie Waning before silently taking his girlfriend's hand as they both walked out of the venue. The exact moment Xie Waning saw my personal chauffeur rushing in alone, her face instantly contorted into an incredibly hideous expression. Everyone in her circle knew that Xie Waning was living a double life. Throughout the years of our official engagement, she was secretly having a scandalous affair with her beloved White Moonlight, constantly fooling around and keeping him tightly by her side. She thought she had kept these dirty secrets completely buried, but her closest friends knew everything, and her enabler parents knew it too. Yet, every single one of them willfully hid the ugly truth from me, simply because they knew I was practically the anchor of her entire existence. If I ever found out and abandoned her, she would completely lose her mind. But this time, she played her cards way too recklessly, and I already knew everything. That fateful night, she handed me a glass of milk, and the moment I drank it, I blacked out. When I finally regained consciousness, I overheard a sickeningly familiar conversation right next to my ear. Waning, have you completely lost your mind? Are you seriously planning to drug Pei Xianshun just to harvest his kidney for Zhou Shinian? Only his organs are a perfect match for the transplant. Xie Wanying's response was chillingly cold and terrifyingly detached. Shinian is hanging on by a thread. He can't wait anymore. As for Pei Xianshun, I will make sure to compensate him fully later. He has always been desperate to marry me anyway. The second this surgery is over, I'll be the one proposing to him. And I promise I will never divorce him for the rest of my life. Song Ruan let out a frustrated roar. He's losing a whole kidney. What's the point of your pathetic compensation then? I don't understand what kind of twisted spell Zhou Shinian has put you under. Back during that horrific earthquake, you saved his life, which left your legs crippled and stripped you of your inheritance rights. And what did he do? He abandoned you and eloped with another woman. It was Pei Xianshun who stayed by your side, nursing you back to health, to master the acupuncture you needed to cure your paralysis. He used his own legs as a pincushion until they were completely bruised and battered. Now that Zhou Shinian is crawled back, seeing you filthy rich, he's leeching off you again. And knowing you're pregnant with Xianshun's child, he has the audacity to weep and beg. And just because you saw him cry, you ruthlessly aborted your own baby, destroying the very first child the two of you ever conceived. To this day, Pei Xianshun still genuinely believes it was his own carelessness that caused the tragic loss of your unborn child, leaving him severely depressed for 3 agonizing months. Xie Wanying's voice suddenly spiked with chilling arrogance. I know damn well that Pei Xianshun loves me unconditionally, loves me enough to sacrifice absolutely everything for my sake. And I know Zhou Shinian is just a selfish bastard driven by greed and status. But I happen to love Zhou Shinian to the point of absolute madness. Then what about Xianshun? What exactly is he to you? My mind is made up, and absolutely no one can change it today. That kidney, I'm taking it, no matter what. The exact moment that horrifying declaration left her lips, I could feel a cold scalpel slicing directly through my bare flesh. The surgeon had heavily underestimated my high drug resistance, and I felt every single wave of excruciating pain rip through my body. Yet, compared to this brutal physical torture, the most agonizing pain was my own heart being hacked to pieces inside my chest. By the time I finally drifted back to consciousness, Xie Waning was gently wiping away a stray tear from the corner of my eye. She looked down at me and asked softly, "Does it hurt that badly?" How could she have the absolute audacity to personally steal my kidney, murder our unborn child in cold blood, and still sit right in front of me with such terrifying composure, staring down at me with those fake, deeply concerned eyes? What's wrong with me? I finally forced the words out, my voice completely hoarse and barely a whisper. Xie Waning remained completely unbothered, replying with a sickeningly sweet gentleness. You suffered a sudden attack of acute appendicitis. But don't worry, the surgery was a complete success. Appendicitis. I let out a breathless, mocking laugh until tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. She didn't find my hysterical reaction unusual at all, merely assuming I was crying from the intense physical pain of the operation. She quickly told me she was going to summon the doctor and rushed out of the room. I lay there in a daze for what felt like an eternity before reaching for my phone to place a call. The line connected almost instantly, and a deeply seductive, lingering female voice echoed from the speaker. Mr. Pei? I took a deep, steadying breath, keeping my voice incredibly quiet yet crystal clear. Su Mu Hva. Do you want to marry me? An abrupt, heavy silence filled the other end of the line. You've clearly dialed the wrong number, Mr. Pei. I am not your precious fiancé. I know exactly who I am calling, and I am asking you. I have absolutely no intention of marrying Waning anymore. Su Muhua's interest was clearly piqued as she replied in a slow, amused drawl. Oh? And what makes you so confident that I would actually agree to marry you? I slowly closed my eyes, completely calm, and whispered, because you are Xie Wanying's ultimate arch-nemesis. And because the picture sitting right on your office desk is a photo of me. A dead, suffocating silence filled the line. It was impossible to tell how much time had dragged on before the other end finally broke the quiet. Su Muhua spoke with a voice that was eerily calm. How did you find out? You only need to tell me. Are you in or out? The line went completely dead silent for 2 agonizing seconds before she finally let out a response. Her voice carried an indescribable surge of raw, hidden emotion, and her breathing had turned noticeably erratic and uneven. Within 7 days, meet me to register our marriage. But understand this, once you become my husband, you are strictly forbidden from having any contact with Xie Waning ever again. I slowly closed my eyes and replied with absolute, unwavering conviction. I won't. 7 days from now, I will never lay eyes on that woman again. The very second, I hung up the phone. I booked a one-way flight to an city for exactly 7 days later, which was deep within Su Muhua's personal territory. It wasn't until the actual day of my hospital discharge that Xie Waning finally bothered to show up. Seeing that I had already packed all my belongings and was standing at the threshold of the ward, she stepped forward, casually reaching out to grab my duffel bag. I'm so sorry, Xin Jian. The company has been absolutely drowning in work lately, and I've been running around planning a massive surprise for you, which is why I couldn't make it out here to see you. I instantly sidestepped her touch, gripping my bag tight as I walked past her. What surprise? A faint, subtle smirk played on the corners of Xie Wanying's lips, and her eyes held a rare, profoundly soft warmth. As she murmured, just come with me, and you'll see. A short while later, the luxury car pulled up directly in front of a grand, high-end hotel. I silently followed Xie Waning deep inside the building. In the moment the massive doors to the grand ballroom were pushed wide open, my eyes were instantly met with a breathtaking sea of red roses and flickering candlelight. It turned out to be an incredibly lavish, meticulously planned marriage proposal. Every single guest in attendance spun around, locking their eyes intently onto me. Xie Waning tightly gripped my hand, leading me directly into the center of the spotlight, before smoothly pulling out a dazzling, high-carat diamond ring from her pocket. Xin Jian. She gazed up at me, her expression dripping with absolute sincerity. Will you marry me? Let's spend the rest of our lives together, okay? I stood there in a complete daze, staring blankly down at her, feeling as though my heart was being brutally crushed by a cold, invisible fist. There was a time when I would have crawled through glass just to experience this exact moment. But looking down at that exquisitely crafted, blinding diamond ring now, the entire situation just felt completely, tragically laughable. How deeply ironic. The dream proposal I had desperately yearned for was actually bought with the price of my own kidney. Just as I opened my mouth to coldly reject her, the grand doors of the ballroom were suddenly thrown open with a violent thud by an uninvited guest. I'm sorry. Am I too late? A weak, fragile voice echoed through the hall. I spun around, only to see Zhou Shernyan standing there, dressed in a pristine white shirt. He leaned against the frame, his face utterly devoid of color, looking completely ghostly. Xin Jian, Wanting. Everything that happened back then was entirely my fault. I never should have kept clinging to Wanting like a desperate fool. And I know I've only been a burden to the both of you. When I heard you were holding a proposal gala, I rushed here simply to give you my blessings. As he spoke, he weakly held out 2 gift boxes toward Wan Ying and me, whispering, I genuinely wish you both a lifetime of happiness. The moment those words left his lips, he turned around, intending to leave the hall. But before he could even take 2 agonizing steps, his knees buckled, his body swayed, and he collapsed heavily onto the hard floor. Shernyan, Xia Wanying's face instantly turned a deathly shade of pale white. She shot up from her knees, sprinting across the room toward him without a single split second of hesitation. Throwing her arms out to catch Zhou Shernyan's falling body, she completely forgot that she was right in the middle of proposing to me. Completely forgot about the blinding diamond ring she was still clutching tightly in her hand. The surrounding guests erupted into chaos, whispering and gossiping furiously all over the hall. I just stood there, completely frozen in place like a useless statue, watching Xia Wanying's frantic, desperate back as she cradled Zhou Shernyan in her arms. As she held him tightly, the bastard nestled against her chest, secretly opened his eyes, and silently mouthed a chilling phrase directly at me. You can't even touch my level of acting, loser. And yet, Xia Waning swallowed his pathetic little performance hook, line, and sinker. The very next morning, I walked straight into the Xia Corporation headquarters to tender my resignation. Years ago, when Wanting was crippled and stripped of her inheritance rights, her family's illegitimate bastard child had ruthlessly usurped her rightful position. Later on, the second her shattered legs finally recovered, she immediately signed a high-stakes corporate betting agreement, vowing to completely double the company's entire revenue within 3 brutal years, just to reclaim everything that had been stolen from her. To help her achieve that impossible dream, I humbled myself to work as her personal executive assistant, drinking myself into severe stomach hemorrhages at business banquets for her sake, and pulling so many grueling all-nighters that I frequently blacked out from sheer exhaustion. But my years of bleeding out on the corporate battlefield for her are finally over. The moment I got back home, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Xia Waning. Her voice carried a rare, underlying hint of panic. That was incredibly uncharacteristic for her. You actually resigned from the company? I replied with absolute composure. Well, since I'm getting married soon, I'm going to be far too busy to waste time coming into the office. Xia Waning didn't even bother to analyze the deeper meaning behind my words, instantly assuming that I had gladly accepted her proposal from yesterday and was simply preoccupied with making arrangements for our upcoming wedding. Her cold, tense tone suddenly softened with relief as she murmured, I'm so sorry, babe. I have to go out of town for an urgent business trip right now, so I won't be able to help you plan the wedding details for a while. Before I could even utter a response, Zhou Shernyan's voice suddenly echoed clearly through the receiver. Ying, thank you so much for the sweet strawberries you got me. Xia Wanying's voice instantly became muffled and distant as she turned away from the phone. Stop it. I'm right in the middle of the phone call. Xia Waning, do you want a bite too? No, I'm not eating it. Go find someone else to play with. The call was abruptly and frantically cut short from her end. I slowly closed my eyes, powered down my phone, and went to sleep, deep into the dead of night. I was violently jarred awake by my phone ringing off the hook with relentless urgency. Song Ruan's completely panicked voice exploded through the speaker. Xin Jian, Wanting jumped in to save Shernyan and ended up getting stabbed over a dozen times. She is losing in catastrophic amount of blood right now. The hospital's blood bank is completely out of type B. Your blood type is a perfect match, and so is Shernyan's. But Shernyan claimed he's too weak from his recent kidney transplant to donate. And then he just vanished into thin air. Can you please come down and save her life? Hearing that, a high-pitched ringing filled my ears, and an overwhelming tide of pure bitterness surged within my chest. I had literally just had one of my own kidneys stolen from me. Did they honestly think I was in any condition to donate blood? Seeing my heavy silence, her voice became infinitely more frantic and breathless with every passing second. Xin Jian, I'm literally begging you. If she doesn't get a transfusion right now, she is going to die. Shernyan is out of the question. You are the only person left on Earth who can save her. She kept desperately pleading with me. After a long, agonizing pause, I realized I couldn't just sit back and let someone die. I threw on a jacket and rushed straight to the hospital. Once there, I found myself lying flat on a cold gurney in the blood donation room, staring blankly as the dark crimson fluid slowly drained out of my frail body. My physical health was already severely compromised and weak, so the moment they finished drawing my blood, the world around me spun and went completely black. By the time I finally drifted back to consciousness, it was already noon the following day. Forcing my aching body up, I prepared to discharge myself, figuring I should check in on Xie Wan Ying's condition while I was at it. The exact moment I approached the door to Xie Wan Ying's private room, the voices of her and Ruan conversing inside stopped me dead in my tracks. Wan Ying, you literally took a blade for Zhou Shernyan and got brutally butchered. Yet that pathetic coward completely abandoned you and ran away the second things got ugly. If Xin Chun hadn't rushed over to give you his own blood for that emergency transfusion, you would be a literal corpse right now. I am begging you, please. Open your eyes and see his true, ugly colors. Dump Zhou Shernyan already and start treating Xin Chun right. Xie Wan Ying went dead silent for a moment before her voice dropped into a cold, defensive tone. He literally just went through a major kidney transplant and his body is weak, so it's only natural he couldn't donate. Hearing that delusional excuse, Ruan was so choked with absolute fury she could barely breathe. Zhou Shernyan's health is fragile. Are you seriously implying that Pei Xin Chun is perfectly fine? Take a good look at how much that man has destroyed his own body for your sake. Over all these grueling years, if you keep betraying and taking him for granted like this, aren't you terrified that he will walk away and leave you abandoned forever? Xie Wan Ying replied with absolute, arrogant certainty. Not a chance. Xin Chen's love for me runs incredibly deep, just as deeply as my own absolute obsession. With Shernyan, he could never bring himself to leave me. Standing right outside that cold hospital door, hearing Xie Wan Ying boast with such unwavering confidence, felt like a dull, rusty blade was violently hacking away at my chest. The sheer agony of it left me completely suffocated and unable to breathe. It turns out that when someone is endlessly favored, they become completely fearless. But you're dead wrong, Xie Wan Ying. I am completely, utterly done loving you. And that is why, this time, I'm walking out of your life for good. Just as I turned around to make my quiet exit, I caught the sharp ring of Xie Wan Ying's phone vibrating inside. Shernyan? Zhou Shernyan was weeping hysterically on the other end of the line, his words muffled, frantic, and barely coherent. Yet, the moment those pathetic whimpers hit her ears, Xie Wan Ying's face completely dropped. She violently ripped the heavy blankets off her body, brutally tearing the 4-needle straight out of the back of her hand. Dark red blood immediately began oozing out of the fresh wound, but she didn't show even a flicker of pain, snatching up her winter coat as she aggressively lunged toward the exit. Wan Ying! Song Ruan screamed, desperately throwing her weight to pull her back. Her voice was vibrating with absolute fury. What the hell are you doing now? Your stitches aren't even healed yet. You are strictly forbidden from leaving this hospital. Xie Wan Ying violently shook off her grip, her expression freezing into an ice-cold glare. As she snapped, Shernyan is having a severe panic attack and can't sleep. I absolutely have to be by his side right now. Song Ruan's face turned completely pale with sheer rage. Are you seriously throwing your own life away for that parasite? What about Pei Xin Chun? He literally just drained his own body to give you a life-saving transfusion. Have you even bothered to ask if he's alive? Xie Wan Ying's footsteps froze for a brief second before she hardened her resolve. She forcefully bolted straight through the doorway, passing right by me without even realizing I was standing in the corridor. I stared at her frantic, retreating figure, sinking into a heavy, dead silence for an eternity. In the end, all that escaped my lips was a quiet, mocking chuckle. I really should have gotten used to this a long time ago. The second that bastard sheds a single tear, her entire world fractures and turns completely upside down, while I could literally bleed myself dry, and she wouldn't even bother to glance at my corpse. 2 days later, Xie Wan Ying finally crawled back home. The exact moment she pushed open the front door and stepped inside, I was quietly organizing my flight tickets and essential documents. Xin Jiang. She walked right up to me, her voice dropping into a soft, murmuring tone. I heard that you actually donated your own blood for me. Why are you so incredibly foolish? I calmly tucked my paperwork away into my bag without even bothering to look up at her. As long as you're not dead, that's all that matters. She seemed completely oblivious to my freezing, detached demeanor, casually sliding into the seat right next to me and aggressively grabbing hold of my hands. The marriage proposal from the other day was completely ruined because of Shern Yin's sudden medical emergency. So I've already set up an exclusive, private banquet to fully make it up to you. I slowly lifted my eyes, staring intently at her, and instantly noticed that due to her massive blood loss and refusing to remain hospitalized, her complexion looked completely drained, ghastly, and terribly weak. Forget about it. What if your precious Zhou Shern Yin faints from heartbreak because you left him? Xia Wanning frowned deeply, snapping with absolute certainty. Don't be ridiculous. I didn't even invite him. I merely let out a cold, mocking smirk. She completely failed to grasp my heavy irony, and seeing my silence, she simply nodded with satisfaction. While we were on our way heading to the exclusive banquet, Xia Wanning took the wheel, driving the luxury vehicle, while I sat quietly in the front passenger seat, watching the city lights and scenery blur past the window at a breakneck speed. Suddenly, Xia Wanying's phone erupted with a sharp, piercing ring. The absolute second she swiped the screen to answer, Zhou Shern Yin's hysterical, pathetic sobbing echoed violently from the speaker. Wanning, help me. I've been kidnapped. They are literally going to murder me. Xia Wanying's face drained of all color instantly as she slammed her foot onto the brakes, before frantically opening up a high-end tracking application on her phone. On the digital map screen, a bright red dot began blinking aggressively. Hold on tight, she roared, violently throwing the steering wheel to the side. The car executed a reckless, screeching U-turn and blasted down the road at full throttle. The sudden violent centrifugal force sent me flying sideways, smashing into the passenger door. My forehead slammed brutally against the cold glass window, and a stream of fresh, warm blood instantly began dripping down the side of my socket. Yet, Xia Wanning didn't even bother to glance in my direction. Her entire mind, soul, and focus were completely consumed by saving Zhou Shern Yin. The vehicle tore maniacally down the stormy highway like a speeding bullet, finally screeching to a halt at the edge of an isolated, completely abandoned bridge. The rain was pouring down in absolute sheets. I couldn't even make out the clear silhouettes of the figures standing ahead through the downpour, only catch a faint, blurry glimpse of Zhou Shern Yin. A crazed man was pressing a serrated blade flush against his throat, standing right at the precipice of the bridge. So you finally decided to show your face, you bitch. You ruthlessly bankrupted my entire corporation and drove my wife to commit suicide. Now, I'm going to strip away the person you hold dearest to your heart right before your eyes. Xia Wanning stepped out into the raging storm, the freezing rain completely soaking through her elegant clothes within a matter of seconds. Yet she didn't show an ounce of cold, stepping forward deliberately as she called out. You got it all wrong. He is absolutely not the man I love most. The unhinged captor stiffened, the razor-sharp blade shifting slightly away from Zhou Shern Yin's trembling neck. What? Xia Wanying's voice sounded profoundly icy and detached. Did you even bother to do your research? That pathetic coward is nothing more than my worthless ex-boyfriend. The very second I became a useless cripple, he packed his bags and abandoned me without a second thought. I despise his very existence. The only man I genuinely love is the one who has faithfully stood by my side through all these brutal years. The moment those words left her lips, she pivoted her head back, locking her eyes onto me inside the vehicle. The sheer intensity of affection in her gaze was deep enough to drown in, leaving me completely stunned. This was the first time in my entire life that Xia Wanning had ever looked at me with such overwhelming warmth. How tragically ironic that it had to happen right now. The captor stared back and forth between us with heavy suspicion. Xia Wanning immediately seized the opening, shouting, holding Zhou Shern Yin hostage is completely worthless. Do whatever the hell you want with him. Tomorrow, Xian Shun and I have a wedding dress fitting, and I don't have the time or patience to waste on your pathetic drama. The moment those words left her lips, she elegantly extended her hand toward me, speaking with a sickening sweetness. Xin Shun, let's get out of here. A wave of pure, paralyzing ice washed entirely over my body. In that exact split second, I finally understood everything. Xie Waning was using me as a literal human shield, cunningly shifting the kidnapper's homicidal target onto me just to ensure her precious Zhou Shunyan's survival. Sure enough, the unhinged captor's resolve fractured instantly. He brutally shoved Zhou Shunyan aside and charged directly toward me like a rabid animal. So you're the one that bitch actually gives a damn about. Letting out a grotesque, bloodthirsty roar, the man aggressively grabbed a fistful of my hair, dragging my body backward toward the dangerous edge of the bridge. Xie Wanying's eyes dilated in sudden panic as she sprinted forward. But instead of reaching out to save me, her arms wrapped tightly around a trembling Zhou Shunyan. Shunyan. Meanwhile, I was violently hauled over the metal railing by the psycho, plummeting straight off the massive bridge into the pitch-black abyss below. The terrifying howl of the gale force winds ripped savagely past my ears, before the freezing, suffocating river water completely swallowed me whole. Through the rushing torrents, I faintly caught Xie Wanying's ice-cold, authoritative voice screaming, "Rescue the kidnapper first. Do not under any circumstances let that bastard escape. Lock him behind bars immediately so we can neutralize the threat once and for all. I will not allow him to ever pose a threat to Shunyan's safety again." I desperately wanted to let out a hollow, mocking laugh, but the freezing river water immediately choked my lungs, causing my vision to fade into absolute darkness. Right before my consciousness was entirely wiped out, the brutal, horrific reality finally hit me. To Xie Waning, my entire existence didn't even hold the same value as the life of her enemy's kidnapper. By the time I finally opened my eyes inside a bleak hospital room, the grim, solemn voice of the attending physician was echoing right beside my ear. Mr. Pei's physical condition has been completely, systematically destroyed. Years of severe alcohol poisoning from corporate events and chronic, extreme exhaustion, compounded by the horrific nerve damage from experimenting with unregulated needles on himself. This traumatic fall has fundamentally shattered his entire immune system and life force. He absolutely must remain under absolute, uninterrupted bed rest. Because if he doesn't, before the doctor could even finish his harrowing warning, Xie Waning, catching sight of me waking up, abruptly pushed past him and rushed straight to the edge of my bed. Her voice trembled with an incredibly rare, underlying panic. "You're finally awake. Tell me, where does it hurt? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" I slowly turned my head to look at her, my eyes completely dead, flat, and devoid of any emotion. "If you genuinely gave a single damn about my life, why didn't you hesitate for even a fraction of a second to rescue the kidnapper instead of me?" Noticing my dead silence, Xie Waning cautiously reached her hand out to cup my pale face, but I instantly pivoted my head away, completely evading her touch. Her hand froze mid-air as she whispered guiltily, "This entire incident was entirely my oversight. I promise I will make it up to you." I merely twitched the corner of my lips into a hollow smirk, saying absolutely nothing. "Xie Waning, the debt of blood and agony you owe me is far too heavy for you to ever pay back." Perhaps driven by some residual, suffocating sense of guilt, Xie Waning actually remained glued to my bedside, nursing me continuously in the hospital for 2 whole days. The precise day I was discharged, she dragged me to a high-end charity auction just to make amends. Since she utterly refused to take no for an answer, I simply let her have her way, completely ignoring her. Upon arriving at the glamorous auction hall, we immediately crossed paths with a very familiar face, Zhou Shunyan. But this time, Xie Waning didn't cast a single glance in his direction the entire night. Instead, refusing to leave my side by even a fraction of an inch, she stayed glued to me, continuously pouring warm water and shelling fresh crab for me, while constantly whispering to check if I felt cold. I knew exactly who this pathetic, elaborate performance was for. She was putting on a show for her own damn conscience, shoveling down her residual guilt just to make herself feel like a decent human being. Right before the bidding war officially kicked off, Xie Waning received an urgent phone call and stepped away for a brief moment. As I sat entirely alone at the cocktail table, an elegant woman approached me, flashing a bright smile as she asked for my contact information. "Hey there, handsome. Mind if I get your number so we can hang out?" Before I could even utter a word, a pale hand aggressively thrust itself into the space between us from behind. She forcefully yanked my arm back, practically burying herself into my chest. "Hands off, he is my husband." Xia Wanying's voice was absolute, razor-sharp ice, as her pitch-black eyes glared death at the intruder. The woman's face drained of color as she quickly stammered an apology and bolted. Xia Waning slowly turned her head down to look at me, her eyebrows knitting together tightly. "Xin Shun, why didn't you shut her down the second she hit on you? We aren't actually married yet, are we?" Xia Wanying's fingers aggressively traced my jawline, her voice dripping with toxic, suffocating possessiveness. "It's happening sooner or later. Aside from me, who else could you possibly dream of marrying?" She locked her eyes onto mine, articulating every single syllable with absolute weight. "I will never walk down the aisle with anyone but you." I stared directly back into her eyes and suddenly let out a low, mocking laugh. How profoundly pathetic. She didn't possess a single shred of genuine love for me, yet she had the audacity to vow I was her only choice. The auction officially commenced, and Xia Waning aggressively outbid everyone on practically every single luxury item. My eyes happened to linger on, dropping millions upon millions of dollars without blinking. Zhou Shinian, who was seated just a couple of rows away, watched the entire display with a pitch-black expression before trailing me as I headed toward the restroom. The second he slipped inside behind me, he locked the door, letting out a disgusting, mocking sneer. "You must be feeling on top of the world today, huh? Hey, Xin Shun, do I seriously need to snap you back to reality?" Waning is acting out of pure, pathetic guilt. She doesn't give a single damn about you. Are you seriously still clueless? Back when she was 3 months pregnant with your child, all it took was a few tears from me, complaining that I couldn't bear the thought of her carrying another man's bastard. And she immediately swallowed the abortion pills without a single shred of hesitation. Oh, and let's not forget what happened just recently. The exact moment I suffered from kidney failure. She didn't hesitate for a fraction of a second to harvest your kidney to save my life. And don't even get me started on what happened on that bridge. That little speech about hating me was just a sick ruse to deliberately paint a target on your back. No matter the time or place, if it means keeping me safe, you're nothing but a disposable meat shield. The absolute second I snap my fingers, that woman will fulfill my every twisted desire. He crept closer, his voice dropping into a dark, suffocating whisper. "Pai Xin Jian, you lost this game a long fucking time ago." He fully expected that by dropping these devastating truths onto my head, he would instantly get to witness me completely breaking down, weeping, and screaming in agony. To him, watching my utter destruction would have been the ultimate, satisfying thrill. But from the very beginning to the absolute end, I remained entirely, eerily calm. I casually turned off the running faucet, lifted my gaze, and stared cold dead into his eyes. "Are you finally done barking?" He completely froze, caught entirely off guard. I thoroughly dried my hands with a paper towel and stated with absolute detachment, because I genuinely don't give a damn. After all, I am permanently leaving this place anyway. He stared at me with wide, completely uncomprehending eyes, utterly unable to process my reaction. "What? How? How the hell can you not care, Xin Shun?" His aggressive interrogation was cut exactly halfway through, and the smug expression on his pathetic face twisted in an instant. Out of nowhere, he aggressively raised his own hand and slammed a brutal slap right across his own face. The sharp, deafening sound of flesh violently meeting flesh echoed loudly throughout the entire restroom. Before my brain could even comprehend what kind of psychotic stunt he was pulling, the bathroom door flew open and Xia Waning violently stormed inside, aggressively shoving me out of the way. "What the hell do you think you're doing to him?" The force of her shove sent my fragile body stumbling blindly backward, and the back of my head smashed brutally against the razor-sharp corner of the marble vanity. The agonizing impact turned my vision completely pitch black as a stream of fresh, warm blood burst down my forehead. Yet, she didn't even bother to waste a single fraction of a glance on my bleeding body. She carefully cradled him in her arms, her voice cutting through the room like absolute ice. I've already spent the last 2 days bending over backward to make amends to you. Why the hell are you still ruthlessly bullying? Shernyan. Show. Shernyan clutched his swollen cheek, whimpering pathetically, please don't blame Xian Shun. This is entirely my fault for getting in his way. Xia Ying's expression darkened into absolute fury as she tightly supported his weight, turning around to storm out. As he nestled comfortably against her chest, the bastard deliberately looked back over his shoulder, throwing me a wildly smug, victorious smirk, leaving only me, slumped completely alone against the cold restroom wall, laughing so hysterically that bitter tears began streaming down my face. Look at yourself, Xian Shun. Just look at what a pathetic joke you are. This is the grand prize for throwing away 15 brutal years of your life on her. What the hell do you actually have left to show for it? That night, she never bothered to crawl back home, and I didn't even waste a single second attempting to call her. My heart had completely, systematically gone dead and numb. The desperate anxiety I used to feel for her safety had entirely vanished into thin air, and I genuinely couldn't bring myself to care whose bed she was sleeping in anymore. With my departure date rapidly approaching, I invited my absolute closest childhood friends out to a luxury hotel downtown to throw one final, definitive farewell party. My boys ended up drinking way past their limits, their eyes bloodshot and watery as they aggressively cursed that manipulative bitch to hell. I simply smiled, downing glass after glass until the tab was fully paid and the night finally wound down. Stepping out onto the open balcony, I let the cool midnight wind hit my face. After letting the night air sober me up for a bit, I was just about to leave the premises when suddenly, drifting from the far end of the dim corridor, the sharp, echoing sounds of a heated argument between Wan Ying and Ruan caught my attention. You have lost your absolute mind over that leech, do you hear me? It's completely insane. Just because that psycho shed a few tears, you actually aborted your own flesh and blood with Xian Shun. Then you ruthlessly forced Xian Shun to harvest his own kidney for him. And now, simply because Zhou Shernyan whimpered that he wants a family, you're seriously planning to carry and birth his baby? Xia Ying's response was terrifyingly cold, clinical, and completely devoid of emotion. If I don't give him a child, he will find another woman to do it, and I absolutely cannot tolerate that. And what about Xian Shun? Do you honestly think you're worthy of a single shred of his devotion? Xia Ying went completely silent for a moment before replying with absolute nonchalance. Am I not literally about to tie the knot and marry the guy? Is that grand gesture still not enough to satisfy him? I stood there completely paralyzed, my fingernails digging so violently into my palms that they drew blood. The explosive argument finally seemed to hit a dead end. Realizing her words were falling on deaf ears, Ruan stormed off in a fit of absolute, suffocating rage. Xia Ying turned on her heel and began walking back toward the suites as well. As if possessed by some morbid, lingering curiosity, I found myself quietly trailing behind her. I watched her stop and slide into one of the luxurious private rooms. The heavy wooden door wasn't fully shut, and through the narrow gap, I clearly saw a smug Zhou Shernyan waiting inside. He aggressively pulled Xia Ying down onto the plush mattress, kissing her deeply as he murmured, "Ying, please, give me a baby of our own." Xia Ying let out a soft, giggling laugh, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck in a flirtatious embrace. "Only if you absolute swear to me right now that you will never, ever let another woman carry your child." Standing outside in the dark corridor, I silently bore witness to the entire disgusting spectacle, before calmly raising my smartphone and recording every single second of their betrayal. This time around, not a single tear escaped my eyes. When your soul is already completely dead, the concept of pain ceases to exist. On the final night before my definitive departure, I began packing up the remnants of my life. The exact moment I folded the very last piece of clothing into my suitcase, the electronic click of the front door lock echoed sharply through the quiet apartment. Xia Ying pushed the door open and stepped inside, bringing with her the unmistakable, faint stench of alcohol and expensive wine. She stood frozen by the entryway, her eyes casually lingering over my packed bags before she asked with utter nonchalance, "Why on earth are you packing up all your suitcases?" I opened my mouth, fully intending to give her the brutal truth, But Xia Wanning cut me off with a sickeningly sweet tone. Xin Jian, can you teach me how to brew your signature Siwu herbal soup? I stared at her, completely stunned and profoundly bewildered as she casually walked into the kitchen. Over the past 15 grueling years, I was always the one who single-handedly served her hand and foot. She had literally never stepped foot inside a kitchen, let alone cooked a meal. After a heavy, lingering silence, I slowly walked in and followed her inside. Once in the kitchen, Xia Wanning stood awkwardly in front of the marble countertop. She began clumsily hacking away at a piece of ginger, her grip on the chef's knife terrifyingly unstable and awkward, making it glaringly obvious that she had never done a single day of manual labor in her entire life. I stood a few paces back, quietly giving her step-by-step instructions without approaching. She displayed a rare, shocking amount of patience, following my instructions down to the letter. The moment the soup finished simmering, she carefully sampled a single sip, and a bright smile bloomed across her face. Wow, this actually turned out incredibly delicious. Yet, she didn't even bother to offer me a single drop of it. Xia Wanning remained completely oblivious to the hollow, dead look in my eyes, glancing down at her luxury watch before abruptly muttering, Xin Chun, I'm incredibly swamped right now, but once I wrap up this business, I promise I'll make time to go out with you. The very second those words left her mouth, she snatched up a vacuum flask, poured every single drop of the freshly brewed herbal soup inside, and sprinted out the door with the container tightly in hand. I just stood there frozen in the center of the kitchen, listening to the heavy click of the front door sealing shut, before quietly pulling out my phone to browse through Zhou Shernyan's private social media feed. Sure enough, right at the top of his page, he had posted a public status whining about craving Siwu soup. Man, I'm dying for some authentic Siwu soup. Is there anyone out there willing to learn how to cook it just for me? Pleading face. I shut off my screen and let out a soft, profoundly hollow chuckle. Years ago, I had practically bent over backward to master that exact recipe because her stomach was so incredibly frail. The moment I heard that traditional Siwu soup was a miracle cure for chronic gastric issues, I literally roamed through countless restaurants, begging master chefs to teach me their culinary secrets. I ruined an endless number of pots and ingredients before I finally perfected it. And yet, a woman who had fiercely refused to set a single foot in a kitchen her entire life, willingly rolled up her elegant sleeves to chop and brew for Zhou Shernyan without a single complaint. Whether someone genuinely loves you or not really is as glaringly obvious as day and night. On the morning of my definitive departure, I single-handedly finalized and packed away the remnants of my life, with several hours left to kill before my scheduled flight across the globe. I threw on a baseball cap and wandered through the streets alone, visiting a few sentimental spots for the very last time. Exactly 6 hours before my plane was set to take off, I walked through the gates of Jinhua High School, the alma mater where our paths had first crossed. The old classroom stood completely desolate and empty. I slowly navigated my way to the exact wooden desk I used to occupy as a teenager, my fingertips tracing the faded, crude carving etched deeply into the varnished wood. Pai Xin Chen Lovet Si Wan Ying Forever. I pulled out a metal key and began slowly, deliberately scraping away at those hopeful letters, grinding down the wood until the words were completely pulverized and illegible. The fine sawdust drifted lazily through the air, looking exactly like the shattered remnants of my wasted youth. Exactly 5 hours before my plane was set to take off, I made my way to the city's famous Lover's Bridge. Our old concentric padlock, now covered in a thick layer of ugly rust, was still hanging tightly from the metal railing. The corroded face of the lock still bore both of our names crudely engraved into it. Back then, I had practically dragged her to this spot, my face burning bright red with embarrassment as I muttered, "Hey, they say that if you lock your names here, your souls will remain bound together for eternity." At that time, Xia Wanning had merely given me a cold, utterly detached grunt of agreement, completely ignoring my romantic gestures as if I were a child playing a foolish game. Looking back at it now, she had obviously never respected or valued my presence in her life. I wrapped my fingers around the rusty metal and yanked with all my might, snapping the chain as it plunged into the rushing river. It disappeared beneath the murky currents without throwing up a single drop of splash. Exactly 4 hours before my plane was set to take off, I made a final stop at the Puzhong Temple. My sole intention was to untie and reclaim the red silk blessing ribbon I had painstakingly hung years ago. But from a distance, I spotted her and him standing directly beneath the grand wishing tree. The elderly abbot turned to him, murmuring softly, "What blessing does this faithful lay devotee wish to pray for today?" Zhou Shernyan replied eagerly, "I pray that our beautiful baby will be born healthy and soon." She blushed furiously in response, her voice dropping into a tender, affectionate murmur as she added, "And I pray that the absolute love of my life, sitting right beside me, achieves his every heart's desire." The old abbot handed them a vibrant red silk ribbon, chanting, "May your profound wishes manifest into reality." The two of them received the sacred ribbon and prepared to tie it securely to the ancient branches, only to realize that the majestic wishing tree was already completely covered and overflowing with countless ribbons left behind by previous tourists. The dense canopy was completely saturated, leaving absolutely no room for them to hang another single thread. Xiaowan Ying's eyebrows knitted tightly together as she snapped authoritatively at a young monk standing nearby. "I will immediately make a $5 million cash donation to this temple's incense fund. Strip every single piece of these worthless rags off the branches right now." The young monk panicked, visibly flustered by her massive financial leverage, and scrambled forward to systematically rip down ribbon after ribbon from the sacred tree. After accumulating a massive pile of discarded prayers, he timidly asked how he should handle the remnants. Without granting the pile a single fraction of a glance, she answered coldly, "Just throw them directly in the trash." Standing right around the blind corner, I slowly, deliberately walked forward and knelt down to sift through the pile of discarded red silks tossed carelessly into the dirt like worthless garbage. Every single one of those ribbons bore the desperate, handwritten vows I had penned over the grueling years, praying fervently for her shattered legs to miraculously heal, praying for her absolute protection, safety, and boundless happiness, and begging the heavens to let us grow old together until our hair turns snowy white. I let out a soft, hollow laugh as a burning sensation pricked the corners of my eyes. Honestly, this was for the best. It saved me the pathetic trouble of having to dismantle and throw away my own memories piece by piece. With one final look, I grabbed my single suitcase and headed straight to the international airport. The moment I boarded the aircraft, the flight attendant politely reminded me to switch off all my electronic devices. I opened up my digital media gallery and pulled up the explicit video recording I had captured that night. The sickening footage of her and him tangled up together, whispering vows of betrayal. I selected the file and hit the attach button, preparing to send it directly to her phone. Beneath the video, I typed out every single character with absolute clinical calm. "You ruthlessly harvested my kidney just to keep Zhou Shernyan breathing. I know everything. The second he shed a single tear, you secretly swallowed pills to murder our unborn child. I know about that, too. And your desperate plan to bear his child, I know it all, Wanting. You've finally gotten exactly what you wanted. I am officially stepping out of your life, and I am handing you over to him completely and unconditionally." I hit send, blocked her number, deleted her contact info, and powered down the device completely. The massive airplane blasted through the storm clouds, and I stared out at the endless horizon through the window, slowly closing my heavy eyes. This time, I will never look back. The aircraft completed its long journey across the world and finally touched down on the tarmac. As I dragged my single suitcase out of the bustling international terminal, I felt a profound sense of relief, as if I had finally awakened from a 15-year-long nightmare. Suddenly, a pristine, porcelain hand reached out, wrapping its slender fingers tightly around mine, before effortlessly taking the heavy weight of the suitcase straight out of my grip, staring blankly into space like a fool. "Don't tell me you're actually still pinning after that toxic bitch?" Across the stunningly arrogant and regal face of Su Mu-hee, there flickered a dark, incredibly dangerous glint of warning, as if the absolute second I dared to nod my head in agreement, she would personally hunt her down and snap her neck, and completely obliterate every single chance of you, crawling back to her just to keep you chained permanently to her own side. Witnessing her fierce intensity caught me off guard, but I gently shook my head with an honest smile. "Not a chance. I have completely, permanently wash my hands of her. I gave you my absolute word that I would never entangle myself in her life again, and I intend to sever all remaining ties with her existence. The absolute second those words left my lips, a breathtaking, radiant smile instantly bloomed across Sue Mu-hee's face, completely illuminating her features. You better remember that promise. She tried her best to maintain her typical, haughty demeanor, yet she tightly intertwined her fingers with mine, effortlessly guiding both my trembling self and my heavy luggage toward the massive luxury fleet she had personally arranged. A flawless line of pristine Maybachs sat parked in perfect formation, and every single one of their trunks simultaneously popped open, revealing an overwhelming sea of vibrant red roses and elegant balloons, right beneath the captivated gazes of the entire bustling airport crowd. Sue Mu-hee fluidly pulled out a velvet box out of nowhere, presenting a blinding, flawlessly cut diamond ring right before my eyes. Look, I know, springing this sudden marriage proposal on you might feel incredibly rushed and overwhelming, but I'm completely done playing the waiting game. I want to bind my life to yours this very instant. I refuse to let you slip through my fingers. I love you, Xian. Marry me, please. Even though taking Sue Mu-hee's hand in marriage was a definitive step I had already planned out. Long before boarding my flight, standing right in the center of this breathtaking spectacle still caused a massive, uncontrollable wave of raw emotion to crash over my heart. Throughout all those grueling years when my soul was blindly chasing after another woman, Sue Mu-hee had silently, fiercely, and unconditionally loved me from the shadows. She simply lacked the courage to ever voice it out loud. I extended my hand forward, nodding my head with absolute certainty. Yes, I will marry you. Sue Mu-hee's slender fingers began trembling violently as she held the sparkling band, her movements completely uncoordinated from pure excitement as she carefully slid the ring onto my finger. Before my brain could even fully process the reality of the situation, Sue Mu-hee aggressively grabbed my wrist and hauled me straight into the back of her luxury vehicle. Did you bring a national identity card? Good, because we are heading straight to the civil registry office this exact second, before anything else has a chance to go wrong. As she spoke, she frantically pulled out her own massive folder of legal documents and slammed them onto the leather seat right in front of me. She had suffered and waited for this exact milestone for far too long, and she wanted our union legally locked down without a single second of delay. Her intense, overwhelming devotion swept me right up along with her, and my heart suddenly began hammering against my ribs like a wild drum. I have every single document packed and ready to go. Let's head straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau. The very split second the confirmation left my lips, Sue Mu-hee violently slammed her foot onto the accelerator, blasting the vehicle down the highway toward the civil registry office. The entire reality around me felt like it had been jammed into a hyperspeed fast-forward button, unfolding at a pace that was almost impossible to fathom. All right, bride and groom, give me a huge smile. 3, 2, 1. Snap. Our official marriage certificate portrait was officially captured. The official stamp slammed down, and our marriage certificate was freshly minted, clutching the 2 red marriage booklets that were still radiating the faint scent of fresh printer ink. Both Mu-hee and I stared blankly at them in a complete daze, overwhelmed by a sensation that was almost entirely surreal. Just like that, we were officially married. Something I once believed could only exist as an impossible, distant dream had materialized into absolute reality in the blink of an eye. Sue Mu-hee was so profoundly overwhelmed with emotion that her voice choked up completely. She threw her arms around me, hugging me so fiercely it felt like she wanted to fuse my body into her very bones. It was as if executing this crushing embrace was the only absolute way. She could fully convince herself that I was genuinely standing right here before her. I simply stood there, letting her hold me tight as an unexplainable, massive wave of pure, suffocating relief finally washed over my weary soul. From this exact second onward, Xia Waning and I are permanently, entirely dead to each other. However, I was completely oblivious to the fact that Sue Mu-hee's insane, multi-million-dollar romantic stunt at the International Airport Terminal had already exploded. The viral video of her high-profile proposal to me was currently spreading like wildfire across every social media platform. And it didn't take long before it flashed across the smartphone screen of none other than Zhou Shernyan. Inside a luxury hotel suite, Xia Waning had just finished showering and stepped out into the room, only to find Zhou Shernyan acting incredibly sketchy, clutching his phone with a deeply troubled, awkwardly hesitant expression plastered across his pathetic face as he stared at her. "If something is bothering you, just spit it out already." As she spoke, Xia Waning casually grabbed a plush towel, carelessly drying off the heavy locks of her completely soaked hair. Zhou Shernyan bit his lower lip, masterfully putting on a fake show of agonizing hesitation, before slowly thrusting the bright smartphone screen directly into her face. "Look, the guy in this trending video looks exactly like Xian Shun. But hey, maybe my eyes are just playing tricks on me, right? I mean, aren't the two of you literally supposed to be walking down the aisle any day now? Why on earth would he publicly accept another woman's lavish marriage proposal and swear to bind his life to someone else? Oh man, could he seriously have been creeping around and cheating on you behind your back this whole time?" The exact second those manipulative words left his lips, he paused, a flash of pure, malicious cruelty shining in his eyes before he instantly masked it, pretending to defend me. "But wait, Xian Shun is so utterly, blindly obsessed with you. There is absolutely no way the guy in this footage is actually him. It's definitely just some random doppelganger who happens to share his exact facial features. Hey, why don't we forward this video to Xian Shun right now, just to double check? Who knows, maybe it's his long-lost identical twin brother or something. But man, now that I look closer, the two of them in this video actually look incredibly compatible and perfect for each other. They genuinely look like a match made in heaven. Look at all these thousands of comments praising how gorgeous and blissfully happy they look together." Zhou Shernyan kept rambling on, masterfully pouring absolute gasoline onto the hidden fire. Xia Wanying's face violently twisted, darkening into a terrifying, pitch-black expression in an instant. A dangerous, volatile rage began burning furiously behind her pitch-black eyes. She was absolutely no fool. There was no earthly way she wouldn't immediately recognize the man starring in that viral clip. The figures lighting up the internet screen were unmistakably myself and Su Muhi. How could I possibly agree to marry Su Muhi? Had I completely lost my goddamn mind? A violent, uncontrollable surge of pure fury instantly welled up inside her chest. She aggressively opened her dialer, fully intending to call my number to demand an immediate explanation, only to find that her call was instantly disconnected. She had been completely blocked. But the brutal realization didn't even stop there. Every single one of her communication channels with me had been systematically blocked, purged, and deleted, sent exactly a few hours prior. A series of lengthy text messages, along with the video file I had forwarded on WeChat, violently hit her screen. Almost instantaneously, her explosive rage was brutally extinguished, replaced by a suffocating, ice-cold dread. Xing Jiang already knew absolutely everything. An absolute, paralyzing panic gripped Xia Wanying's entire soul. Her trembling fingers frantically tapped the screen to open that specific video attachment. The figures locking lips in the footage were unmistakably herself and Zhou Shernyan. On that exact night, the two of them had been wildly, passionately tangled up in each other's arms for hours. The camera frame shook slightly throughout the recording, making it painfully possible to feel the exact, shattering agony I experienced while witnessing the betrayal. Xia Waning felt her entire brain go completely vacant and numb. In that exact split second, she couldn't hear a single sound from the world around her anymore. The final parting words I left behind were cutthroat and absolute to the extreme. Xia Waning reread that final sentence a countless number of times. Yet her mind desperately, fiercely refused to process the reality right before her eyes. How? How the hell did things end up like this? I was supposed to be utterly, blindly infatuated with her. Wasn't I always the pathetic fool who was willing to sacrifice his entire existence just to make her smile? How could I suddenly stop loving her out of nowhere? How could I just completely throw her away like worthless garbage? And how on earth did I find out about the forced kidney harvest and the forced abortion? Even worse, how did I know about her secret vow to bear Zhou Shernyan's child? Xia Wanying's pristine complexion drained of color, turning a sickly, ghostly white. Her throat tightened into a bitter, suffocating knot, leaving her completely speechless. Her thoughts were a chaotic, tangled mess, rendering her utterly incapable of rational thinking. The man whose entire universe revolved around her had abruptly declared he didn't care anymore. How could her narcissistic ego possibly accept such a devastating reality? But considering the monstrous sins she had ruthlessly committed against him, now that he knew the truth, how could any human being possibly bear that cross? If only I had remained completely blissfully ignorant, I would have undoubtedly, faithfully stayed right by her side forever. Someone must have deliberately fed me the classified details. Almost instantaneously, a specific face flashed vividly in Xie Wanying's chaotic mind. The second song, Ruan Ruan's name, entered her thoughts. Xie Wanying frantically dialed song Ruan Ruan's number, her voice practically screaming over the line. Did you spill everything? Did you tell Xianshun every single thing I did? Is that why he's running into the arms of another woman and marrying someone else? Hearing Xie Wanying's unhinged, aggressive interrogation, Song Ruan Ruan completely froze in her tracks. She had literally just stepped out of a grueling hours-long surgery, not even having regular access to her phone yet. She hadn't even had a single chance to process what was happening. She was utterly clueless as to what exactly had transpired, yet she instinctively lashed back at the unhinged woman over the phone. What absolute garbage are you spouting now, Wanting? I have literally never leaked a single word to Xianshun. It's not like he and I were ever particularly close confidants anyway. And what the hell do you mean he publicly accepted another woman's proposal? When did this even happen? You seriously need to stop joking around. But despite her vehement and genuine denial, Xie Wanying fiercely refused to believe a single word out of Ruan Ruan's mouth. Aside from you constantly sticking your nose into our business and defending Xianshun, there's literally absolutely no one else who would do this. Oh, I see right through you now. His sudden, aggressive breakup demand and this ridiculous stunt at the airport today. The two of you masterminded this entire plot together behind my back, didn't you? You're both just desperately dying to see me crawl back to you in pathetic regret, right? Well, let me make this crystal clear. I have stated it 1,000,000 times already. The only man who holds a candle in my heart is Shern Yin. However, I still fully intended to keep my vow and legally marry Xianshun. I literally orchestrate a massive, multi-million-dollar public display of affection for him at the auction. And we are practically just one single piece of paper away from being husband and wife. What the hell else could he possibly be through a temper tantrum about? She paused, a realization hitting her. Oh, I get it now. Is he just throwing a fit because he wants to rush the marriage? He completely blocked every single one of my personal contact channels. So do me a massive favor and pass a direct message along to him for me. Tell him I am willing to drag myself to the registry office to marry him this exact instant. Will that finally satisfy his pathetic, fragile ego so he can stop acting like a dramatic child? Xie Wanying aggressively massaged the bridge of her nose, exerting every ounce of her willpower to keep her volatile temper under control. Song Ruan. Ruan let out a sharp, mocking laugh, utterly beside herself with pure rage. Xie Wanying, whatever choices Xianshun makes have absolutely zero to do with me. In the past, the only reason I ever spoke up on his behalf was because I was completely sick to my stomach watching you ruthlessly treat him like dirt. But now, the man has finally opened his eyes, snapped back to reality, and completely walked out on you. I am not lifting a single finger to mend whatever the hell is broken between you two. So don't you ever dare call my phone begging for help again. You got exactly what you deserved, you heartless monster. The absolute second the final syllable left her mouth, a harsh, continuous dialed tone cut through the line. Song Ruan Ruan slammed the phone down in a fit of absolute disgust. Xie Wanying stood completely paralyzed, holding the dead device to her ear, her expression twisting into a complex storm of deep-seated unease. Sitting across the room, Shern Yin caught the visible wave of sheer panic washing over her face. His eyes instantly darkened with intense malice for a brief moment, but he quickly forced a soft, reassuring smile. Hey, didn't you say it yourself? Xianshun is so utterly, blindly obsessed with you. This is undoubtedly just a temporary lapse in judgment. He's just throwing a petty temper tantrum. Let him throw his little fit. Once he cools down, he'll crawl right back. You seriously don't need to stress yourself out over this. For 15 long years, the guy has been permanently glued to your side, never once showing a single sign of wanting to leave your presence. How could he possibly abandon a decade and a half of history over a few minor misunderstandings? Besides, you only forced him to harvest his kidney and abort the baby because you had absolutely no other choice. As long as you sit him down and explain your reasoning thoroughly, he will absolutely, undeniably come around to your side. Who knows? In just a few short days, he'll snap out of it and crawl right back to your doorstep. After all, a deep, consuming love that spanned over 15 long years isn't something a weak-willed man can just sever overnight. He carelessly tossed out those shallow, half-hearted words of comfort just to play the part. Whether my sudden departure was an absolute reality or a theatrical bluff was completely, entirely inconsequential to his narcissistic agenda. He only spouted this comforting garbage because he desperately needed Xia Waning to remain calm and emotionally stable for his own sake. At the end of the day, his ultimate prize was a completely healthy, genetically perfect heir. If the pregnant mother's mental state plummeted into absolute chaos, the resulting emotional stress might damage the fetus, which would completely ruin his master plan. Zhou Shernyan slowly, deliberately ran his fingers over the smooth surface of her lower abdomen, his predatory gaze brimming with absolute anticipation for this child to finally be brought into the world. If it weren't for the fact that the elderly patriarch of the Zhou family was currently on his absolute deathbed, and the imminent multi-billion-dollar division of the massive Zhou family inheritance was rapidly approaching, he would never have rushed so aggressively to force Xia Waning into carrying a baby and tying his own hedonistic lifestyle down with the heavy shackles of parenthood. The sprawling Zhou family dynasty was already crawling with an endless number of illegitimate bastards, and every single greedy branch of the extended clan was currently salivating over the massive inheritance. He refused to let the lion's share of the family's immense wealth slip into the hands of his rival siblings. Xia Waning kept her long eyelashes lowered, remaining completely silent for a heavy moment. It appeared as though his manipulative words had successfully penetrated her ego, yet at the exact same time, she seemed completely lost in a daze, as if hearing absolutely nothing at all. It wasn't until Shernyan called out her name a repetitive number of times, wrapping his arms tightly around her bare neck before leaning down to press his lips against hers, that she finally, gradually managed to snap back to reality. Shernyan was absolutely right. Pei Xian-chun was so utterly, hopelessly infatuated with her. No matter what catastrophic sin she committed, he would never possess the absolute strength to leave her presence. An occasional, dramatic temper tantrum was completely normal for a fragile man. Besides, he had always been incredibly pathetic and easy to pacify with a few sweet words. Once she eventually explained the agonizing, sacrificial reasons behind her harsh decisions, he would undoubtedly understand and forgive her entirely. Xia Waning forced down the rising tide of dark, suffocating anxiety, passionately returning Shernyan's deep kiss. Within seconds, the two of them were wildly tangled up in each other's arms once again. Over the subsequent 3 grueling days, Xia Waning had continuously accompanied Zhou Shernyan on a lavish, high-profile vacation across countless tourist destinations, while simultaneously indulging in wild, unhinged nights of passion in countless luxury hotel suites. And yet, even after 3 entire days had fully elapsed, her smartphone screen remained completely devoid of a single text message or notification from me. Forget about receiving a desperate text. The reality was that I hadn't even bothered to unblock her personal account on a single digital platform. The dark, creeping sense of sheer dread within Xia Wanying's chest became impossible to ignore. Even while laying directly beside a whispering Shernyan, her mind was visibly wandering, completely detached from the physical present. After a long, agonizingly quiet silence, she suddenly turned, a heavy mask of profound guilt covering her face as she looked at Zhou Shernyan. Shernyan, I won't be able to stay here with you for the time being. I've been away from my corporate duties for several days now, and it's finally time for me to head back and handle these issues once and for all. Of course, Waning, even though your schedule is packed, please make sure you don't push yourself past your absolute limits. Remember to prioritize your rest. okay? Zhou Shunyin tossed out those hollow, half-hearted words with utter indifference. Xiaowan Ying remained completely blind to his psychological manipulation. Or more accurately, she had simply grown entirely accustomed to his dismissive behavioral patterns. He had always functioned exactly like this, only when he desperately needed to exploit her leverage. Would he actively flatter her ego and shower her with fake affection? The second her utility expired, he would instantly cast her aside without a single care. Deep down, she fiercely loathed this toxic personality trait of his, and yet her unhealthy obsession rendered her utterly incapable of breaking free from his chains. Ultimately, she had no choice but to unconditionally swallow the bitter pill. Xiaowan Ying personally drove Zhou Shunyin back to his private residence, before immediately speeding back to our grand villa. The absolute second she stepped past the threshold, her eyebrows violently knitted together in deep, profound confusion. The sprawling estate felt noticeably emptier, as if missing a massive amount of personal belongings. Yet the structural foundation remained unchanged. Spotting the head butler, she snapped, "Where the hell is Pei Xianchun? Has he seriously still not crawled back home yet? Just how much longer does he plan to drag out this pathetic rebellion?" Xiaowan Ying demanded, her brow furrowing deeply. As her voice dropped into a bone-chilling, icy register, the head butler and the surrounding domestic staff exchanged incredibly anxious, hesitant glances. Letting out a heavy, defeated sigh, the old butler finally summoned the absolute courage to speak. Young Mississippi Mr. Pei completely packed up all of his belongings and permanently moved out 3 entire days ago. He systematically purged the entire mansion, leaving absolutely nothing behind that belonged to him. Since you never asked about his absence, we naturally assumed you were already fully aware of the situation. Furthermore, it appears Mr. Pei has officially tied the knot and married Miss Su Mu-hee. The entire internet is currently exploding with viral news and footage of their wedding. Did the two of you genuinely break off your engagement for good? Or is this simply a dramatic lover's quarrel that got completely out of hand? Should we immediately instruct your public relations assistant to take legal action? Do you want us to scrub these trending marriage headlines off the internet entirely? He tentatively held out his tablet, presenting the explosive front-page media articles directly for her review. The absolute millisecond the butler's explanation registered in her brain, Xiaowan Ying's entire body froze instantly, as if she had been struck by a massive bolt of lightning. A sharp, deafening ring echoed violently inside her ears, rendering her completely deaf to the rest of the world around her. After an agonizingly long silence, she forced the words past her trembling lips, questioning the butler. Pai Xin-jian has genuinely packed up his life and married someone else for real? He has completely, truly abandoned me? No, there's absolutely no way. Is he just playing some sick, elaborate prank on me? How could he possibly bind his life to Su Mu-hee of all people? He knows damn well that she is my absolute, bitterest corporate enemy. Is he seriously doing all of this just to spite me? An absolute, paralyzing shock completely consumed her mind. As her eyes locked onto the official, high-definition marriage portraits of myself and Su Mu-hee, she stared at the digital certificates continuously, yet her mind fiercely, desperately refused to accept the reality. She knew she had messed up catastrophically. She was completely aware of her monstrous sins and toxic behavior, which was exactly why she planned to spend the rest of her life making it up to me. So why on earth did I have to go and marry Su Mu-hee of all people? In a violent fit of absolute rage, Xiaowan Ying hurled the butler's expensive tablet straight across the room. I had firmly resolved to pack up and completely vanish from her life. There wasn't a single microscopic trace of my existence left anywhere in that house. Su Mu-hee had been her fiercest, most ruthless corporate rival for ages, and she was absolutely no saintly, innocent angel. Did Xianchun truly understand the kind of dangerous woman Su Mu-hee actually was? Marrying a calculated viper so recklessly like that? Was he not even slightly terrified of being brutally manipulated and exploited? The deeper Xiaowan Ying spiraled down that delusional train of thought, the more she couldn't stop drowning in a twisted wave of pure anxiety for my well-being. After an agonizingly long silence, she aggressively dialed my old contact, only for Su Mu-hee to pick up. Su Mu-hee, Listen to me very carefully. This is Xie Waning. Xin Chun belongs to me, and he belongs by my side. He only accepted your pathetic proposal because he's throwing a temporary tantrum. You better not dare mistreat him, and you better keep your filthy hands off him. He is absolutely not a pawn for you to use in your petty corporate revenge plot against me. I strongly advise you to send him right back to my doorstep this instant. If you don't, I will personally destroy you and make your life an absolute living hell. On the other end of the line, Su Mu he let out a cold, deeply mocking chuckle. Xie Waning, wake up and smell the coffee. Pei Xin Chun is officially my legal husband now. We've already crossed every single line, consummated our union, and done it all. You actually expect me to just hand him back to you? Keep dreaming, you delusional psycho. As she spoke, she deliberately, sharply emphasized the word husband, and his voice carried a deeply satisfied, triumphant tone. Xie Waning was a grown, experienced woman of the world. How could she possibly miss the heavy, intimate implication behind that tone? Her fingers instinctively balled into tight, white-knuckled fists. If they weren't separated by a digital phone connection, there was absolutely no doubt that she would have fiercely slapped Su Mu he right across her arrogant face. Before Xie Waning could even summon the breath to scream back, Su Mu he ruthlessly cut her off, her voice dropping into a razor-sharp, icy register. Xie Waning, let's get one thing straight. Xin Chun is completely done with your pathetic toxic games. He doesn't harbor a single microscopic ounce of love for you anymore. Besides, you've always preferred that worthless leech, Zhou Shunyan anyway. Xin Chun doesn't need your cheap, pathetic, pity-driven table scraps of affection. You were never, ever worthy of a man as pure as him. The treasure you so carelessly threw away, I will cherish with my entire soul. I will value him above all else. Isn't having your precious, sure, Nian more than enough for you? Xin Chun has completely, permanently washed his hands of your pathetic existence. So why the hell are you still desperately trying to cling to him like a basic, obsessed ex? The absolute millisecond those brutal truths were delivered, Xie Waning fell completely, utterly silent. I had loved her with an intensity that bordered on worship and treated her like an absolute queen. She understood that undeniable reality better than anyone else on this earth. But now, I had officially married another woman, completely ending my desperate pursuit of her. I was never going to show up in her universe ever again. And he definitely doesn't require you to make amends for your monstrous, catastrophic sins. She couldn't comprehend why she was acting so unhinged. She only knew with absolute certainty that she could never let me slip through her fingers, or she would be completely consumed by agonizing regret for the rest of her miserable life. Xie Waning simply blurted out whatever delusional thoughts crossed her mind without a filter. But Su Mu he had absolutely zero desire to keep engaging with Xie Waning and wasting her precious energy on these meaningless, toxic arguments. Pei Xin Chun has officially washed his hands of you and moved the hell on. If you don't back off and leave him alone, I will personally ensure your absolute destruction. I strongly advise you to stop harassing our household and disturbing our peace. We are blissfully happy together, and we don't need a pathetic, obsessed ex trying to force her way into our lives. The absolute second she finished speaking, Su Mu he prepared to sever the connection. But right in that precise moment, Xie Waning could clearly hear my voice echoing vividly through the background of the phone call as I softly called out to Su Mu he, Muhi, hey, aren't you supposed to be cooking that special dinner for me? I'm absolutely starving over here. In our past life, I had only ever allowed myself to show vulnerability right in front of her. But later down the line, just to help her secure massive corporate deals and navigate cutthroat boardrooms, I forced myself to mature and adopt a deeply calculated, stable demeanor, gradually shifting away from the deeply dependent puppy love I once showered upon her. Xie Waning froze completely, drifting into a heavy, suffocating daze, realizing she couldn't even remember the last time. The absolute final moment, I had allowed myself to lean on her for emotional support. If she could somehow peer straight into the deepest depths of my soul right now, I would tell her with clinical calm, the only reason I stopped leaning on you was because you completely shattered my expectations and broke my spirit a countless number of times. I literally could not afford to trust you with my heart anymore. She was always ready to completely cast me aside the very second Zhou Nian shed a single fake tear. So I simply forced myself to stop placing my emotional survival in her heartless hands. Xia Wanning didn't understand the absolute gravity of her actions. She only felt a sharp, agonizing sensation in her chest, as if a million rusted needles were stabbing her heart, sending continuous, dull waves of crushing torment throughout her entire body. Why the hell did hearing me act so soft and dependent on Su Mu make her feel so utterly sick to her stomach? I had completely removed myself from her equation, just like she wanted. Logically, she should be throwing a massive celebration. Once she delivered Zhou Shinian's baby, their picture-perfect family of 3 would be bound together by blood forever. Perhaps Zhou Shinian would even formally propose and make her his legal wife. This was the exact, ultimate dream that Xia Wanning had aggressively chased after for years. Yet at this precise moment, her soul was overflowing with a bitter, unutterable misery. Xia Wanning lay completely motionless on her sprawling luxury bed. Yet she stared blankly at the ceiling for the entire night, completely unable to catch a single second of sleep, while the surrounding atmosphere of the massive mansion grew terrifyingly, deafeningly quiet. Over the past few days spent catering to Zhou Shinian's every hedonistic whim, her daily eating habits had become incredibly chaotic and severely neglected. In the dead of night, a violent, agonizing gastric flare-up caused her to double over in excruciating pain. Her pristine complexion turning completely pale and sickly as cold sweat poured down her skin. Xin Jiang, my stomach medicine. I desperately need my pills. Xia Wanning gritted her teeth, desperately wheezing into the empty darkness. She instinctively, desperately cried out my name from the absolute deepest depths of her subconscious. But the only thing that answered her agonizing pleas was the suffocating, dead silence of the room. Her mind had completely blocked out the reality that I had walked out on her ages ago, and was already officially married to Su Mu He. Continuous, merciless waves of stabbing gastric pain slammed into her body one after another, driving her to the absolute brink of literal insanity. God only knows how many agonizing hours slowly ticked by before Xia Wanning finally managed to gather a shred of absolute, raw strength to brace herself. Her trembling, unstable body swaying dangerously as she dragged herself out of the bed. She frantically pulled open her nightstand drawer, searching for her usual stomach medication. Why the hell is it empty? I know for a fact that Xin Chen always kept a perfectly stocked supply of my specific stomach pills right here. Only then did the brutal realization slowly, agonizingly pierce her brain. I had permanently abandoned her. Xia Wanning stumbled blindly out of her bedroom door, her balance completely shot. The head butler caught sight of her frail state and rushed forward to support her weight, instantly handing her the exact stomach medication she desperately needed, while softly offering a piece of genuine, concerned advice. Young miss, no matter how cutthroat or chaotic your corporate schedule becomes, you absolutely must not neglect your meals and forget to eat on a proper schedule. Your gastrointestinal health has always been incredibly fragile, so you must constantly protect your body. Young miss, are you starting to feel a bit of relief yet? Is there anything specific you would like to eat right now? I will have Aunt Wong prepare it in the kitchen this very second. The absolute moment the medication finally settled in her system, the ghostly paleness on Xia Wanning's face gradually faded, a hint of natural color returning. I want the ginseng-infused chicken soup, she blurted out entirely automatically, without even thinking. That rich, deeply savory, and aromatic flavor profile felt like it had been permanently branded, straight into the absolute core of her soul. Aunt Wong didn't dare waste a single second of time. She rapidly prepared a fresh pot of the requested ginseng chicken soup, and elegantly presented the steaming bowl right before Xia Wanning. But the exact millisecond she took a single, tentative sip, an overwhelming, greasy aftertaste violently triggered her stomach lining, completely destroying whatever microscopic shred of appetite she had left, and causing her to gag, a wave of intense nausea hitting her throat. The flavor. This is completely wrong. Xia Wanning's expression darkened with volatile rage as she let out an angry hiss, violently sweeping her arm across the table and smashing the entire bowl of soup onto the floor. The head butler and Aunt Wong exchanged incredibly anxious, deeply uncomfortable glances. Miss Xia. I followed Mr. Pei's exact, proprietary recipe down to the absolute milligram. I swear I did everything within my absolute power to match his flavor profile. Aunt Wang's voice shook violently with pure terror, terrified that she was about to be instantly fired. Xia Wanying's brows knitted tightly as she stormed straight into the commercial kitchen. Attempting to replicate each specific culinary step I had meticulously taught her in her memories. Wrong. Every single piece of this is completely wrong. She violently shattered every bowl and utensil within arm's reach, throwing an absolute tantrum. The chaotic, suffocating frustration in her chest bubbling over into unhinged madness. The technical steps and the ingredients were identical down to the letter. Yet the final flavor profile of the chicken soup was completely hollow and artificial. Could honestly be, simply because the soul of the dish was missing Pei Xian Chun. The deeper Xia Wanting spiraled down that mental rabbit hole, the more her explosive fury boiled over. She aggressively and systematically began obliterating the luxury kitchen, smashing appliances to pieces. Life without Xian Chun changes absolutely nothing. My world doesn't revolve around him. The only man who holds a candle in my heart is, and always will be, Shi Nian. Her eyes injected with blood as she continuously chanted those words, desperately attempting to brainwash herself. A long, suffocating silence passed before she decided to completely numb her chaotic mind with work. She immediately tore out of the mansion, speeding straight toward the corporate headquarters, to aggressively tackle the massive mountain of backlogged operations that had piled up during her absence. For several grueling days and nights, Wanting completely locked herself in her office, eating and sleeping at the firm. But with my abrupt, absolute resignation from my executive post, the internal dynamic of the entire corporate empire had noticeably fractured into something unrecognizable. The timeline execution for every single major venture was completely falling apart at the seams. The once seamless synergy among the executive partners had utterly deteriorated into chaos. Toxic friction and hostile shouting matches became a daily, unavoidable reality within the departments. Paralleling this corporate downfall, Wan Ying's own mental and physical health plummeted to an absolute all-time low. Inside the main executive boardroom, Xia Wan Ying's face was completely dark with thunderous rage, plunging the entire room into a suffocating, dead silence. Virtually every single high-ranking project manager and department head present was being absolutely, mercilessly shredded to pieces by her venomous tongue. The terrified executives could only lower their heads, desperately praying to vanish into thin air. God only knows how long the agonizing, toxic tirade actually dragged on, until Wanting finally and coldly dismissed the corporate assembly. The traumatized staff scrambled out of the boardroom doors like prisoners escaping a cage. Xia Wanting exhaled a long, heavy breath, collapsing back in her leather executive chair, looking utterly drained and physically broken. I had completely walked out of her life, and her entire reality was violently destabilizing as a result. The brilliant strategic mastermind who used to fight alongside her on the corporate battlefield was permanently gone. Now, every single human being who interacted with her walked on absolute eggshells, terrified of her volatile temper. The company's overall operational efficiency had plummeted far below historical benchmarks. Even when she finally dragged her exhausted body back to the mansion, the sprawling estate felt like an ice-cold tomb. Granted, the household was still fully staffed with domestic servants. Yet that warm, welcoming sanctuary of a home had completely evaporated into thin air. Years ago, her legs had been left utterly mangled and paralyzed from a horrific accident. Even though I had personally tracked down world-class medical specialists to successfully restore her mobility, her joints were never truly restored to their pristine, original condition. Every single time a sudden shift in the weather occurred, an agonizing, deep-seated ache would plague her bones. And over these past few stressful days, that chronic pain in her lower limbs had flared up with a merciless vengeance. Blinded by the agonizing throbs, Xia Wanting began violently, desperately pounding on her own thighs. Yet the brutal physical assault provided absolutely zero relief to her suffering. Her voice cracked as she weakly, pathetically whimpered my name into the empty air. a sudden, consuming wave of intense longing for my presence violently clawing at her hollow chest. Her sensory memory vividly, desperately recalled the comforting sensation of my warm hands. Meticulously performing therapeutic massages and precision acupuncture to soothe her aching joints. But the reality was that I had packed up my life and permanently vanished, having absolutely zero desire to ever look back at her again. Every single facet of her perfectly orchestrated existence was rapidly, violently spinning out of control. Absolutely every minor inconvenience in her day transformed into an unbearable source of psychological torment. Her severe bipolar disorder, which my very presence had kept completely stabilized and dormant for over a decade, had officially broken through its mental dam and was now violently, continuously triggering out of control. It was only in this precise, shattering moment of clarity that Wanting finally came to a brutal realization. It wasn't that I couldn't survive without her narcissistic presence, but rather, she was the one who desperately, completely needed me. Without me anchoring her reality, her entire life had violently flipped completely upside down, and every single mechanism in her world was rapidly clashing and breaking down. Xia Waning was finally starting to feel the first bitter, suffocating stings of profound regret. She had arrogantly assumed she would easily adapt to an existence completely devoid of my presence. But the agonizing, reality-shattering truth was the exact polar opposite. Ever since the day I walked out, every single fleeting minute and torturous second of her day was heavily plagued by my memory. She was secretly, desperately praying that I would magically manifest before her and reverse time to the way things used to be. But the reality remained absolute. I had officially tied the knot and married Su Muhi. The exact millisecond that devastating reminder pierced through Wan Ying's consciousness. She felt a tight, suffocating weight crush her lungs, making it impossible to even draw a single breath. Just as she was frantically preparing to redial Su Muhi's number to scream into the phone, Zhou Shunyan's name suddenly flashed across her screen as he aggressively rang her line. Wanting, do you remember that comprehensive hospital examination I dragged you to the other day? Well, the official lab results are finally in. You are officially pregnant. We are finally having a baby together. Aren't you absolutely ecstatic? Xia Waning completely froze in her tracks, paralyzed on the spot. Her brain utterly failing to compute or process the words pouring out of the receiver. Ecstatic? Happy? Should she honestly be celebrating this? Logically, she should be absolutely thrilled. But why on earth did her heart feel completely devoid of a single ounce of joy? Instead, she was being entirely consumed by a dark, paralyzing wave of sheer, unadulterated panic. If she was genuinely carrying another man's child, would she ever be able to successfully track me down and beg for my return? She had already inflicted an endless mountain of monstrous, unforgivable trauma upon my soul. And now that she was officially, undeniably pregnant with Zhou Shunyan's biological offspring, would I ever possess the absolute capacity to look past her sins and forgive her? She didn't even dare to follow that terrifying train of thought. The deeper she analyzed the situation, the more her entire reality felt like a chaotic, terrifying void. Xia Wanying's voice shook violently as she stammered her panicked response to Shunyan. This fetus, is it absolutely 100% mandatory that we keep it and bring it to term? Hearing that completely unexpected, cold response over the line, the fake, predatory smile on Zhou Shunyan's face instantly hardened into ice. What the hell are you saying, Wanning? I explicitly told you I want a biological heir to bring life into this mansion, specifically a child that carries my own bloodline. We meticulously discussed this exact family plan a countless number of times already. If your fragile ego suddenly can't bring itself to accept this reality, or if you're simply terrified that your pathetic ex-pay Xianshun is going to throw an absolute fit of jealous rage over our biological child, then by all means, go march yourself straight into a clinic and abort the baby right now. At the end of the day, my only goal is to secure a blood heir. It doesn't explicitly have to be your womb that delivers it. It was an incredibly rare occurrence for him to completely lose his cool, his tone dripping with intense, calculated anger. Xia Waning completely lost her footing, spiraling into a frantic, submissive panic. She rapidly, desperately stammered out an apology to appease his volatile ego. No, no, that's not what I meant at all. I am fully prepared to embrace and carry this child to term. I was simply, completely caught off guard by how incredibly fast the conception actually happened. Zhou Shunyan deliberately played his psychological chess game, executing a tactical retreat to secure absolute control. It's entirely fine, Wanting, no matter what final, permanent decision you choose to make here. I will always support and understand your final perspective. If Xin genuinely cannot bring himself to tolerate it, then terminating this pregnancy is completely fine with me. I refuse to be the reason for any further catastrophic friction between you and Xin Shun. Even though Xin Shun has technically already rushed down the aisle and married another woman, I still firmly believe you have a fighting chance to reclaim him. Hearing his slick manipulation, Wanting instantly, resolutely finalized her ultimate execution path. Shunyan, listen to me. I am absolutely 100 bringing this child into the world. I will step up, fulfill my maternal duties, and shower this baby with absolute love. As for Xin Shun, I will personally handle the confrontation and explain everything to him. Even when he inevitably divorces that woman and crawls back to my side, I will ensure his presence never compromises or threatens the security of your biological heir. Because he truly loves me, he will unconditionally accept and raise our child as his own. Having successfully extracted the exact, submissive response he wanted, Shunyan's lips curled into a predatory smirk as he coldly replied, "Perfect." Truthfully, he didn't give a single damn. As long as Xia Wanning was legally and financially locked into birthing and funding this baby, his grand scheme was completely secure. With the multi-billion-dollar backing of the elite Xia family empire, he was now guaranteed to seize the massive inheritance of the Zhou dynasty. The absolute second she hung up the phone, Wanning was instantly hit with a wave of intense regret. She fiercely refused to abort the fetus. Yet her brain was completely short-circuiting on how to successfully manipulate me into coming back, let alone how to force me to raise another man's biological child. After spiraling in agonizing hesitation for what felt like an eternity, Xia Wanning chose to execute a ruthless corporate warfare strategy to aggressively crush the commercial operations of Su Mui's firm. She completely buried herself alive in back-to-back boardroom operations for weeks. Even when Shunyan actively tried to schedule romantic dates to maintain his psychological grip, she coldly rejected his advances on multiple consecutive occasions. Shunyan didn't show a single microscopic ounce of frustration or irritation. He simply played the part of the doting partner, occasionally sending sweet texts and domestic photos of their estate, to keep her completely blinded and secure. Wanting didn't suspect a single thing, blindly swallowing his fake devotion as absolute gospel. Until today, when Ruan suddenly sent a high-priority, encrypted message straight to her personal phone. An explosive, candid paparazzi photo captured inside a VIP nightclub lounge. In the shot, illuminated beneath the suggestive, dimly lit crimson hue of a nightclub neon, Shunyan was aggressively pinning a highly provocative, seductive woman against his chest. The two of them were violently, passionately locking lips in a scandalous, unhinged embrace. The slutty woman's manicured hands were explicitly, hungrily sliding directly underneath Zhou Shunyan's designer shirt. Xia Wanning, solely out of respect for our historical sisterhood and the close bond we once shared, this is officially the absolute, final time I'm going to warn you about your life choices. Zhou Shunyan is a manipulative, bottom-feeding demon who doesn't possess a single moral bone in his body. While you're literally sacrificing your body to carry his fetus, he is out actively hunting and hooking up with random tramps. The exact second you suffer a corporate downfall or a medical emergency, and your absolute financial utility to him drops to zero, he will discard you like trash without a single second of hesitation, leaving you completely broken, just so he can publicly parade his next wealthy target. In fact, he'll likely be the very first monster to kick you while you're down and dance on your grave. If you deliberately choose to remain completely brainwashed and obsessed with a toxic leech like Zhou Shunyan, then consider our friendship officially dead and buried forever. Xia Wanning, just take a look at this. staring at that horrifying photo countless times. Her eyes widened, bloodshot and strained to the absolute breaking point. She was literally carrying his child. Why on earth was he still out there, shamelessly hitting on other women? Was everything she did for him these past few days still not enough? Why did she swallow her pride and sacrifice everything for his sake, only for him to brutally shatter her heart like this? An all-consuming, fiery rage instantly erupted within her. Fueled by an unbridled fury, Xie Yuanying's heart burned, as she aggressively typed out a few sharp words. "Send me the location right now. I'm coming over." The moment Ruan shared the coordinates, Xie Yuanying tore through the streets, speeding toward the destination at breakneck velocity. Standing just outside the room, the overwhelming aura radiating from her was a bone-chilling, murderous frost. Seeing this song, Ruan instinctively took several steps back, desperately trying to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, inside, the two vile lovers were making out as if nobody else existed. "I heard that woman is currently pregnant with your child. You won't abandon me for her, right?" "Of course not, babe. I only need Yuanying to give birth to that kid, so that the entire Zhou family fortune will legally belong to me. Furthermore, I fully intend to swallow the Xie family whole." A look of sheer, venomous cruelty flashed across his eyes. That absolute fool, Xian Shun, is utterly pathetic, constantly throwing himself at Xie Yuanying to win her favor, making so many worthless sacrifices in vain. Serve him right. Whether he crawls back to Xie Yuanying or not doesn't even matter. Yuanying is still carrying this child anyway. Once it's born, every single asset of the Xie family will be completely mine. By the way, is the drug I asked you for ready? The moment this baby takes its first breath, I need to use it on Yuanying, so don't you dare ruin my master plan. Hesitating slightly, He Yanting reluctantly pulled out a small vial, which was instantly snatched away by Zhou Jiren. Watching him smirk with satisfaction while scanning the instruction manual, He Yanting couldn't help but speak up with a heavy heart. "Are you seriously trying to render Xie Yuanying permanently infertile? This specific drug is a strictly banned substance. It inflicts massive, entirely irreversible damage to the body. Aren't you afraid she'll despise you forever if she finds out?" As a Dr. Zhou Jiren had met abroad, she had followed him back to the country. This contraband was incredibly rare. She had gone through immense trouble just to secure it. Naturally, she was terrified that if the truth ever came to light, she would bring utter ruin upon herself. Yet, Zhou Jiren merely scoffed, completely unfazed. "Once I've made up my mind, absolutely no one can stop me. The moment she finishes giving birth, I'll administer the drug, so relax. Even if she somehow finds out, she's so hopelessly obsessed with me that she won't even care. She loves me enough to unconditionally surrender everything she owns. It's just a minor toll on her body, rendering her unable to conceive anymore. No big deal. I've graced her with my presence, blessed her with a child, and completely overlooked her sordid history with Pei Xinchen. What on earth could she possibly complain about?" He let out a deeply contemptuous sneer, utterly treating Xie Yuanying's deep devotion like worthless garbage. To a parasite like him, profound affection was both utterly useless and incredibly exploitable. Leveraging Xie Yuanying's blind infatuation is more than enough to accomplish everything I want. After carefully stashing the vial away, he noticed the sheer terror written all over He Yanting's face. "Rest assured, Yanting, I would never treat you like that. Once this grand scheme succeeds, we will both reap the ultimate rewards. She's too blinded by love to ever hold a grudge against me. So don't worry." He Yanting let out a bitter smile, nodding faintly. "I certainly hope so." The two twisted lovers embraced each other intimately, completely unaware that Xie Yuanying was standing right outside, hearing every single word. She felt as if she had been plunged into a freezing abyss, her entire body turning completely numb. Every cruel word she had once hurled at me was now rebounding upon her as a twisted form of poetic justice. Only by tasting the agonizing venom of these exact words herself could she finally comprehend the crushing pain I endured back then. Suddenly, Xie Yuanying violently kicked the door wide open. She delivered a savage punch straight into He Yanting's face, viciously shoving the woman aside. With her eyes bloodshot from pure rage, She clamped both of her hands tightly around Zhou Jiren's throat. You got some nerve, Zhou Jiren. Did you genuinely think that just because I love you, I wouldn't destroy you? Is that it? As the oxygen in his lungs rapidly depleted, Zhou Jiren's face turned a deep crimson before bruising into a suffocating purple. He frantically clawed and thrashed at her hands, struggling for air against Xie Yuanying's death grip. I can't breathe. Xie Yuanying, let go. I'm begging you. But his desperate pleas failed to move her even a fraction, as her eyes flared with nothing but an all-consuming, murderous hatred. Zhou Jiren, I loathe you to the very core of my being. I sacrificed absolutely everything for your sake. When you used to treat me like a mere trophy to brag about, I bit my tongue and endured it. When I was broken and lost my utility, you cast me aside like trash, and I still endured it. But the moment you saw me rebuild my career and return home, you forced me to abort Pei Xinshan's baby, and demanded I harvest his kidney just to save your pathetic life. I swallowed every bit of that agony and complied with everything, solely because I loved you. And yet, how did you repay me? What did you even take me for? Just a brainless tool for you to exploit. I am a human being made of flesh and bone. My heart beats with real blood and raw emotion. I feel pain just like anyone else. Zhou Jiren, how can you be so sickeningly heartless? Xie Yuanying shrieked until her voice went completely hoarse, as if screaming would purge the intense, suffocating fury trapped in her chest. Zhou Jiren's weak attempts to pry her hands away gradually grew feeble, and his desperate thrashing grew slighter by the second. Seeing that he was truly on the verge of suffocating into unconsciousness, Xie Yuanying finally released her brutal grip, though the blazing fury burning deep within her eyes showed absolutely no signs of dying down. Zhou Jiren coughed violently, hacking so hard it felt as if his lungs would rupture. His face flushed with manic relief, like a condemned man who had just escaped the gallows. It took a considerable amount of time before he finally regained his senses, and suddenly, tears began flowing down his face like an absolute waterfall. Yuanying, please, you've got it all wrong. I would never dream of hurting you. I swear I didn't mean any of it. I genuinely love you. I was just backed into a corner with absolutely no other choice. If I don't seize the Zhou family inheritance, I'll be left completely penniless, reduced to begging for scraps on the street. You wouldn't want to see me suffer like that, right? Xie Yuanying let out a hollow, utterly despairing laugh. I can't believe that, even after being caught red-handed, you're still putting on a pathetic act to manipulate me. Your mouth endlessly spouts lies about loving me. Yet while you were climbing into my bed just to get me pregnant, you were simultaneously sleeping with another woman behind my back. Was a single child not enough to satisfy your greed? Or are you just inherently a vile, unfaithful beast? You claim you had no choice because you wanted the Zhou inheritance? If you had just been honest with me, I would have gladly helped you fight and conquer it. Why did you have to be so sickeningly avaricious that you plotted to swallow the entire Xie family estate as well? You even went as far as secretly drugging me to destroy my fertility. If you had simply agreed to marry me with a pure heart, whether it was the Zhou family or the Xie family, absolutely everything would have been yours anyway. You could have had everything you ever desired. So why did you have to brutally trample on the pure devotion I gave you? Xie Yuanying interrogated him, each word bleeding with profound betrayal and pain. Zhou Jiren's face turned completely ashen, utterly trapped in a corner with no escape. His lips trembled uncontrollably, completely failing to utter a single coherent word. An absolute, deathly silence instantly engulfed the entire room. After what felt like an eternity, Zhou Jiren finally stammered out, But it's different. These two situations are completely different. As for where exactly the difference lay, he was too paralyzed to say. Sinking into utter disillusionment, Xie Yuanying sneered. Cat got your tongue? Then let me spell it out for you. You assumed that if you simply married me, the vast fortunes of the Zhou and Xie families wouldn't fully belong to you. You craved absolute power and boundless wealth, demanding that every single cent be tightly grasped, solely within your own two hands. Jiren, your greed is truly disgusting. Have you ever actually looked at yourself in the mirror? Do you honestly think you have the actual competence to control everything? Aside from manipulating me and playing around with those trashy side chicks, what real worth do you even possess? You aren't even fit to stand in Xinshin's shadow. Zhou Jiren let out a sharp, mocking scoff. Hey Xinshin, how could that pathetic loser ever compete with me? Even when starting from the exact same baseline. He lags miles behind. He bled and slaved for years, yet failed to win a fraction of your heart. While I easily wrapped you around my little finger without shedding a single tear, is that not proof enough? I can smoothly manipulate scores of women into doing my exact bidding. Is that not real capability? He laughed without a shred of remorse, his eyes glittering with pure malice. Xie Yuanying, look, I know you're hopelessly in love with me. We're literally having a child together, so stop throwing this childish tantrum. Isn't all of this just because you want me to dump those other women? Fine, consider them gone. We'll get married, and our little family will be blissfully perfect. Let's just bury all this past drama and turn over a completely fresh leaf, all right? He waited with supreme confidence, fully expecting Xie Yuanying to eagerly agree. Yet, this time, her expression remained chillingly detached. Zhou Jiren, my greatest lifelong regret is ever loving an absolute monster like you, which made me blind enough to throw away Pei Xinshin. The only reason your pathetic deceptions ever worked on me before was solely because I chose to love you. Without that love blinding me, your cheap, amateurish tricks wouldn't have fooled me for a single second. But starting from this very moment, my love for you is utterly dead. I am officially washing my hands of you. As for this unloved mistake of a child, I'm aborting it. I refuse to let anything tied to you exist in this world. Leaving those bone-chilling words behind, her face iced over, as she turned on her heel to walk away, only to be desperately grabbed from behind by Zhou Jiren. Yuanying, I was wrong. I really, truly know I messed up this time. Please, just forgive me one more time. You've already forgiven me so many times before. So what's one more second chance? Please, you're the one who enabled this behavior by spoiling me anyway. So technically, it's your fault. Look, He Yanting and I are absolutely nothing. Can you just trust me for once? Even if you don't believe me, just give me a chance to prove myself. I swear I'll be the perfect father. He locked his arms around her waist, refusing to let go, his voice trembling with a pathetic, desperate weakness. But Xie Yuanying didn't feel a single shred of pity anymore. She cold-bloodedly pried Zhou Jiren's fingers off one by one, not caring in the slightest if she bruised his hands in the process. Zhou Jiren, aborting this child isn't a negotiation. It's a direct notification. I never gave you the right to refuse. This mistake of a child cannot be allowed to exist. Go find someone else to breed your spawn. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. Her bone-chilling words pierced straight through Zhou Jiren's heart. This time, absolute primal terror gripped him. No, please don't murder my baby. He shrieked hoarsely, begging so pitifully he was practically groveling on his knees. Yet, the elite bodyguards of the CF family remained utterly unfazed as they coldly stormed in and restrained her upon the freezing operating table. Only a short, agonizing moment later, the fetus was completely eradicated from Xie Yuanying's body. The child was officially gone. Xie Yuanying didn't shed a single tear of grief. Instead, she felt a wave of profound relief. If this child had actually been brought into this world, she feared she would never have the right to beg for my forgiveness. Now, she was finally paying the price for the sins she committed. She owed me a debt, and she was forced to make amends to me, because Xie Yuanying's pregnancy was in its very early stages. The abortion procedure was completed incredibly fast. Clutching her dully aching abdomen, she instantly broke down, sobbing like an absolute river. Outside the operating room, Zhou Jiren wept in complete and total despair, but not a single soul stepped forward to offer him comfort. I was wrong. I completely ruined everything. My ticket to the Zhou family fortune is entirely down the drain. Where the hell is He Yanting? Why isn't she backing up my story? Just as he was about to unleash a torrent of vile curses, Xie Yuanying's icy voice instantly cut him off. Don't waste your breath. He Yanting is heavily implicated in smuggling highly illegal narcotics, and she has already been hauled off to prison. As for you, you won't be joining her just yet. Really? So I'm completely in the clear? Zhou Jiren completely misconstrued the profound malice in her words, naively assuming that He Yanting had simply taken the entire fall for him. However, Xie Yuanying's very next statement shattered his pathetic, delusional fantasies into absolute pieces. How could you possibly be off the hook? The blood debt you owe to Xinshin has yet to be fully repaid. So you aren't allowed to escape into a prison cell, just yet. Song Ruan. In a few days, once Zhou Jiren recovers a bit of his strength, schedule the surgery to forcibly extract the kidney that never legally belonged to him in the first place. What was stolen must be returned to its rightful owner. Hearing this terrifyingly cold and hazardous decree, Song Ruan was initially too stunned to process the horror. Xie Yuanying, are you completely out of your mind? Once a kidney is removed, it cannot be retransplanted. Furthermore, given Zhou Jiren's currently fragile condition, losing this vital organ will literally kill him. Are you intentionally trying to sentence him to death? Zhou Jiren was instantly consumed by absolute, blinding terror. He frantically groveled and cowered, weeping miserably. Yuanying, I know I sinned. I'll beg for Pei Xinshin's forgiveness on my hands and knees. I'll do anything. Just please don't harvest my kidney. I don't want to die. I swear I don't want to die. He curled into a pathetic, trembling ball on the hospital bed, wishing he could literally vanish through a hole in the floor to escape her gaze. No, Xinshin's kidney does not belong inside a monster like Zhou Jiren. Even if it can't be reused, it must be severed and returned to him, leaving its ultimate fate entirely up to him. This matter is absolutely non-negotiable. Xie Yuanying's tone was grim, delivering an absolute, unchallengeable verdict. Song Ruan was instantly left completely speechless. She never imagined that once Xie Yuanying's love turned to ash, she would become this ruthlessly vindictive. But she was powerless to sway her resolve. After a tense, agonizing silence, Song Ruan let out a deep, defeated sigh. Fine, I will schedule the pre-op examinations for the earliest available slot. But what happens to Zhou Jiren after the surgery? Xie Yuanying replied with chilling indifference. Hook him up to a dialysis machine to barely keep him breathing. Once he has properly begged for Xinshin's forgiveness, leave him to rot and let nature take its course. Without a single shred of hesitation, she turned and exited the hospital, no longer giving a single damn whether he lived or died. From this moment on, his existence had absolutely nothing to do with her. Severing this lifelong toxic attachment seemed nowhere near as difficult as she had initially feared. Yet, a dull, agonizing ache still throbbed faintly within her chest. The lingering pain served as a brutal reminder of the horrific trauma she had endured. Xie Yuanying clutched her chest tightly, gasping heavily for air. But this agony was miles away from the sheer hell she had forced me to suffer. She destroyed her own flesh and blood with her very own hands. She poured that laced milk with her own hands to steal my kidney. Even during that kidnapping, she ruthlessly pushed me into the jaws of death. She shattered and traumatized me far too many times. Now that she finally realizes her horrific sins and genuinely repents, what on earth must she do for me to even consider forgiving her? Without even realizing it, Xie Yuanying's feet had led her back to the high school, where she had once studied. The security guard recognized her instantly, letting out a warm laugh as he called out, Miss Xie, what a surprise to run into you here. It's been ages since you last visited your alma mater. Back in the day, you were an absolute legend around this campus. You and young Master Pei were hailed as the brilliant twin stars of the International Academy. In Jingshi, the school still whispers tales about the legendary duo you two were back then. Come to think of it, what a crazy coincidence. Young Master Pei actually dropped by the school just recently. He mentioned he was here to pay his respects to his old teachers. Is that why you're visiting today as well? Xie Yuanying stood frozen in absolute shock. Her pupils violently contracted as she desperately grabbed the guard's rough, calloused hand. Pei Xinshin was actually here. Do you remember exactly where he went? Please, I need to know every single spot he visited that day. Well, after paying his respects to the faculty, young Master Pei headed straight down to the small woodland area, the exact plot where you all did volunteer work during Arbor Day years ago. As for what he was doing there, I honestly couldn't tell you. Perhaps if you head over right now, you'll find out for yourself. Thank you so much. Armed with a definitive lead, Xie Yuanying retraced her memories, sprinting frantically toward the small grove. Every single tree planted in this grove belonged to a specific student. each adorned with a tiny plaque dangling from its branches that clearly labeled the graduation year, class, and the student's name. She searched frantically, scanning trunk after trunk, until her eyes finally landed on the tree bearing my name. A violent, deep scratch carved into the bark practically blinded her. It was completely obvious that it had been aggressively gouged out just a short while ago. Xie Yuanying desperately dug through the deep recesses of her mind, and after a long, agonizing moment, a buried fragment of memory resurfaced. Back during their high school days, Zhou Jiren, and I were the most prominent figures on campus. The three of us had grown up together as childhood sweethearts. But her eyes had always been locked solely on Zhou Jiren, leaving her completely blind to anything that concerned me. On that very Arbor Day, their classmates had discovered a tree carved with the words, Pei Xinchen loves Xie Yuanying. They playfully teased her, gushing about how incredibly lucky she was to have two handsome childhood sweethearts constantly vying for her attention. Back then, she had merely replied with a piercingly cold indifference. I have absolutely no use for a pathetic, useless nuisance crowding my space. And that pathetic, useless nuisance was none other than me. Only now did the painful realization finally dawn on Xie Yuanying. I had likely overheard her cruel words that very day, which was exactly why I began to gradually distance myself from her life. From then on, I could only bury my deep affection for her into the darkest corners of my heart, never daring to approach her or disturb her peace ever again. If Zhou Jiren hadn't brutally abandoned her 5 years ago, she probably would have never discovered the truth. During all those years, she was blindly, madly infatuated with Zhou Jiren. I was silently, painfully loving her from the shadows for just as long. But now, the confession I had carefully carved into the bark was gone forever. I had completely and permanently washed my hands of her. Xie Yuanying felt a sharp, agonizing stab pierce straight through her heart. Finding the brutal reality completely impossible to accept, desperate to fix it, she purchased a small pocket knife and meticulously carved fresh, deep strokes back into the trunk. Pei Xinchen and Xie Yuanying will stay together for all eternity. Following that, she frantically visited every single landmark that held a piece of our history. The love padlock inscribed with our names on the Lover's Bridge had been completely removed. It doesn't matter. She desperately convinced herself. I can just buy a brand new one and hang it up again. Next, at the Miaoying Temple, Xie Yuanying tracked down the head abbot, frantically demanding answers. Master, where are the red prayer ribbons that Pei Xinchen hung up before? Please, guide me to them right away. In the past, she had only casually heard me mention that I had dedicated countless red prayer ribbons to her blessing. Yet she never bothered to learn what those prayers actually said. She had simply never given a single damn. The abbot hesitated, a profoundly complex and heavy look crossing his face. After a long silence, he pressed his palms together and let out a deep, sorrowful sigh. Amiba, Benefactor Xie. Just recently, Benefactor Pei made a massive donation of 5 million yuan, specifically requesting that every single one of his red prayer ribbons be taken down. Every blessing hung by Benefactor Pei has been completely removed and discarded. They are long gone, and this poor monk is utterly powerless to retrieve them. Hearing this, a violent buzzing sensation exploded inside Xie Yuanying's ears. What kind of monstrous, unforgivable sins had she committed? My pure, unadulterated devotion had been completely trampled and wasted by her own hands. In a fit of self-loathing, Xie Yuanying struck her own face with a vicious slap. It took an eternity for her to regain a shred of composure. Master, I will donate an additional 10 million yuan right now to completely strip away every ribbon containing my prayers for Zhou Jiren. From this moment on, every single wish I make will be dedicated solely to the health and happiness of Pei Xinchen. The head abbot, utterly powerless to soothe her grief, simply shook his head and let out another profound sigh. Such foolish, tragic obsession. Yet, he didn't refuse her money. He knew all too well that denying her was entirely pointless. Once Xie Yuanying set her mind on something, she would obsessively stop at nothing to get it done. Heaven only knows how many agonizing hours bled by, but Xie Yuanying spent them personally writing out tens of thousands of prayer ribbons. each containing a completely unique, heartfelt vow. One by one, she hung them up with her own hands. And as the crimson ribbons fluttered in the wind, they danced with the desperate, raw sincerity of her love. Upon finally leaving the Miaoying temple, Xie Yuanying rested for a single night, before immediately catching a direct flight straight to Suqing. Over the past several days, she had clashed with Su Mu multiple times, only to suffer utter, humiliating defeat every single time. Throughout those intense corporate showdowns, she could distinctly recognize my signature tactical style and strategic footprint. But since I continuously ghosted her and refused all her calls, she was left with absolutely no options. She was forced to personally hunt me down. Right down in the lobby of the Su Group headquarters, Xie Yuanying stood by the curb alongside a luxury sports car packed to the brim with lavish gifts. Thousands of fresh, vibrant flowers were meticulously arranged to spell out a massive message. Pei Xinchen, please forgive me. Countless ultra-expensive, rare luxury watches and a staggering mountain of premium gifts were stuffed carelessly into the trunk as if they were nothing but cheap, worthless trinkets. Such a ridiculously extravagant and flashy spectacle instantly captured the undivided attention of a massive, murmuring crowd. Xie Yuanying had actually hired an army of people to beg for my forgiveness on her behalf. Anyone who could successfully locate me and shout, "Xie Yuanying is deeply sorry. She truly repents and begs for your forgiveness," would instantly be handed 10,000 yuan, causing a massive stampede of random bystanders eager to help. The exact moment Su Mu and I stepped through the main entrance of the company corporation, we were instantly blindsided by this grand, chaotic circus. In a flash, both of our faces darkened with intense, chilling displeasure. "Xinchen, look, Xie Yuanying has actually crawled back, begging for your mercy. Are you really planning to go back to her side? Even though we had been living a peaceful, profoundly blissful life together lately." Su Mu was still plagued by a lingering sense of deep insecurity. The mere fact that I had hopelessly loved Xie Yuanying for so many agonizing years always kept her on edge, constantly gripped by a quiet, agonizing anxiety. I instantly offered her a deeply reassuring and comforting gaze, tenderly intertwining my fingers with hers in a tight, unbreakable grip. "I will never, ever look back. I don't even want to breathe the same air as that woman. Mu, please have a little more faith in yourself and in me. The absolute only regret I harbor in my heart right now is that I didn't abandon Xie Yuanying much sooner to build my life with you." Hearing those words, Su Mu's eyes widened in sheer, breathless shock, her pupils dilating. Amused by her completely stunned expression, I let out a soft, affectionate chuckle, leaning down gracefully to press a tender, passionate kiss against her lips. "Mu, my love for her is completely and utterly dead. I am pouring my entire soul into loving you now. So, I must trouble you to help me drive that woman away. She is an absolute eyesore." Su Mu instinctively bit her lip, her heart bursting with uncontainable ecstasy. "Leave it to me. I'll handle her. I won't let her anywhere near you ever again." Saying that, she gently but firmly pushed me through the corporate entrance. In a complete flash, all her previous vulnerability vanished. Her gaze instantly iced over, and her entire being radiated a terrifying, dominant aura. Su Mu marched directly toward Xie Yuanying with pure authority, and ruthlessly slapped her across the face. "Xie Yuanying, how dare you continue to harass my husband? No matter what pathetic stunts you pull, he will never forgive you. This little display of yours is absolutely laughable. You brutally shattered Xinchen's heart countless times when you had him, and now you're trying to guilt-trip and emotionally manipulate him like a hypocrite. Did you honestly expect him to just take you back? In your absolute dreams?" As she yelled, her physical attacks grew increasingly rapid and aggressive, her eyes flashing with a ruthless, unyielding light. Every strike was delivered with enough vicious force to completely break her. Xie Yuanying desperately fought back with everything she had, screaming, "Su Mu, the only person Xinchen has ever truly loved is me. I messed up. I'm going to beg for his forgiveness. I will willingly do whatever it takes to make it up to him. I am ready to pay any price. So what does this have to do with you? You are nothing but a pathetic thief who stole him away from me. Don't you dare delude yourself into thinking he will ever love you. The two women violently clashed, tearing into each other, unleashing savage blows without a single shred of mercy, all while viciously tearing at each other's deepest psychological wounds. Sumyu let out a mocking scoff. Loved you? If he loved you, why did he marry me? If he loved you, why did he kiss me and make me his absolute wife? Xie Yuanying, stop living in your delusional fantasy world. He harbors absolutely nothing but disgust for you. You might as well kill that pathetic sliver of hope right now. The moment she finished speaking, her elite security detail rushed forward. Sumyu had no intention of playing fair, as long as she could permanently eliminate the threat of Xie Yuanying. She didn't care about using overwhelming numbers. Remember, this is my turf. On her direct command, several heavy-duty guards tackled Xie Yuanying to the asphalt, pinning her down completely and robbing her of any chance to break free. Fresh cuts and severe bruises rapidly bloomed across her skin. Yet she seemed entirely numb to the physical agony. Her tear-filled eyes remained locked onto my retreating figure as she thrashed wildly. Xinshin, I'm so sorry. Please. As the desperate apologies tore from her throat, Xie Yuanying began hacking violently, spitting up mouthfuls of crimson blood from the sheer, crushing impact of the beating. She stubbornly, obsessively locked her tearful gaze onto me, desperately trying not to miss a single shred of my emotional reaction. Sumyu felt nothing but absolute, overwhelming disgust, frantically waving her hand to signal the bodyguards to drag Xie Yuanying away like trash. Pulling out a wet wipe, she meticulously cleansed every single droplet of Xie Yuanying's blood off her skin, waiting until she was completely spotless before stepping back to my side. Xinshin, do you think I was a little too violent just now? Her previously fierce, icy expression was now laced with an anxious vulnerability. I softly shook my head. Not all. I'm just utterly stunned. That Xie Yuanying actually had the audacity to crawl back and look for me. Logically, shouldn't she be clinging to Zhou Jiren for the rest of her days? Sumyu then proceeded to detail every single piece of dirt she had dug up regarding Zhou Jiren's recent scandalous activities. Hearing the sheer depravity of Zhou Jiren's actions left me completely speechless. I never imagined this would be the exact catalyst to make Xie Yuanying regret her life choices. But honestly, it was absolutely laughable. I had dedicated myself to her side for so many agonizing years, treating her with nothing but pure devotion, yet her heart never wavered from me. But the moment Zhou Jiren actively plotted to systematically destroy her body, climbed into bed with another trashy woman, and shamelessly used her as a mere stepping stone to swallow the entire Xie family. Fortune, only then did she finally snap and abandon him. It truly goes to show that unless the blade actively cuts your own flesh, you will never comprehend the agonizing pain. If Zhou Jiren had demanded a kidney transplant, and the organ required was her own, would she have treated the situation with such effortless, dismissive nonchalance? The exact same scenario, yet the moment it happened to Xie Yuanying, she found the agony completely and utterly unbearable. No matter how deep or unyielding your devotion might seem, there will always come a day when it is entirely eroded and drained to zero. Where on earth does she get the supreme confidence to believe that a few cheap, pathetic words of apology could ever make me run back to her? The entire situation was pure, unadulterated irony. Even if she bled and suffered physical trauma for my sake right now, it wouldn't even begin to scratch the surface of the physical and mental hell I was forced to endure. Mew, breathe easy. For the rest of my natural life, my heart belongs solely to you. I pulled Sumyu tightly into a deep, protective embrace, as if reassuring her, while simultaneously soothing the lingering ghosts of my own past. Sumyu wrapped her arms around me just as tightly, whispering, "We're going to stay together for all eternity." Outside, the security detail quickly threw away every single piece of that pathetic eyesore, and within moments, the front entrance returned to its pristine, orderly state. Sumyu tenderly accompanied me back to our sanctuary. But the very next morning, the moment we opened our eyes, Xie Yuanying, who had been forcefully kicked out the previous evening, was once again standing directly outside our private villa. She was groveling on her knees, right in the middle of a torrential downpour, stubbornly waiting for me, flat out refusing to move an inch no matter who tried to drive her away. The brutal wounds plastered all over her body remained completely untreated, bruised into horrific, massive purple welts that looked utterly terrifying. Shinshin, I am so incredibly sorry. I was wrong. She endlessly repeated that exact same desperate phrase like a broken record, her voice completely hoarse and raspy, yet she showed absolutely no intention of stopping. The torrential downpour relentlessly lashed down upon her fragile frame, causing the old, deeply rooted injury in her leg to flare up with an agonizing throb. Her complexion rapidly drained of all color, turning deathly pale, and her body swayed violently several times, looking as if she were on the absolute verge of collapsing. Yet, I didn't feel even a single shred of pity or heartache. I just stood there silently, watching this pathetic circus play out like a cheap soap opera that had absolutely nothing to do with me. It was utterly hysterical. Pulling a textbook pity play like this? Did she honestly think I would ever feel bad for her? The body belongs entirely to her. Even if she drops dead, right out there, it won't cost me a single night of sleep. Thinking this, I slowly averted my gaze, turning my back on her completely. I strolled over to the kitchen to see what delicious meal Su-Miu was whipping up, gladly offering her a helping hand. The atmosphere between us was intensely warm, intimate, and cozy. We playfully teased and flirted with one another, our faces constantly illuminated by radiant, blissful smiles. When we finally sat down to eat, we affectionately fed each other, the sweetness between us practically overflowing. Watching that beautiful scene from the window cut through Xie Yuaning like a jagged, rusted blade, leaving her entire heart drowning in a toxic swamp of agonizing jealousy. This domestic, affectionate vibe was something she and I had never shared in our entire history. Our relationship had always felt more like cold acquaintances or a rigid superior-subordinate dynamic, lacking even a single spark of genuine lovers. Xie Yuaning had never realized this brutal reality as clearly as she did right now. To a man like me, Su-Miu and she were on two entirely opposite ends of the universe. My attachment to her was completely and irrevocably dead. I was actively, deeply falling in love with Su-Miu. How? How could this be happening? A bone-deep, sharp agony radiated directly from her chest cavity, rapidly engulfing her entire being in a suffocating wave of despair. Her crippled leg felt as if it were being violently pulverized by countless invisible hammers, throbbing with a pain so intense it practically choked the air right out of her lungs. Yet, she stubbornly refused to stand up or give up her pathetic vigil. She held onto the delusional hope that if I just saw her suffer a bit longer, I might break and show mercy. But her desperate expectations were ultimately crushed into absolute dust. Even when her vision went black and she collapsed unconscious into the mud, I never once showed my face. Instead, Su-Miu snuggled deeper into my protective embrace, the two of us naturally drawing closer, before sealing our bond with a passionate, effortless kiss. By the time her eyes finally fluttered open again, Xie Yuaning found herself stranded in a Beijing hospital bed, her eyes completely vacant and hollow. From the absolute beginning to the very end, I hadn't offered her a single drop of compassion. Waves of agonizing, blinding pain pulsed relentlessly through her crippled leg, making even the slightest twitch an absolute, excruciating torture. In her hazy, semi-conscious state, Xie Yuaning felt a bizarre, haunting sensation as if she were being forcefully thrown back to 5 years ago, back to that exact moment of absolute, suffocating despair. Except this time around, the reality was brutally different. Back then, she had lost absolutely everything. Yet she still had me standing firmly as her unbreakable shield. But now, she ruled over everything, yet she had permanently lost me for all eternity. The grueling physical agony was nothing compared to the violent tearing inside her chest. Xie Yuaning squeezed her eyes shut, completely drowning in a dark sea of grief as Song Wanyuan quietly pushed the hospital door open. Catching sight of her friend's utterly pathetic state, she could only shake her head, before letting out a long, heavy, and thoroughly exhausted sigh. If you knew it would end in this absolute disaster, you should have never done it. You had countless opportunities to hit the brakes and save yourself, but you stubbornly refused to listen to a single word of my warnings. How do you even possess the sheer audacity to beg Shinshin for mercy now? Deep down in your soul, you know the brutal truth, don't you? His love for you is entirely dead. Clinging to him like a parasite will only make him despise you even more. Xie Yuanying kept her eyes tightly shut, pretending to be completely deaf to the lecture. But her white-knuckled, tightly pursed lips instantly betrayed her inner turmoil. After a long, agonizing silence, she slowly opened her eyes, her voice laced with an unyielding, delusional fanaticism. I'm absolutely never giving up on him. Shinshin loved me with every fiber of his being for so many years. If I just stay persistent, he will eventually see the raw sincerity of my heart. There's still a chance. He will change his mind. Seeing her friend completely blinded by this toxic obsession, Song Ruanyuan completely stopped trying to reason with her. She knew all too well that Xie Yuanying was far past the point of listening to logic. The only option left was to let her smash headfirst into a dead end until she learned her lesson. She slowly opened a medical file containing Zhou Jiren's latest updates and spoke calmly. The kidney that Zhou Jiren stole from Shinshin has officially been surgically extracted. It is currently being stored under strict preservation at the hospital. The Zhou family completely abandoned him, leaving him to survive on grueling dialysis. For the rest of his miserable life, he will live in a waking hell. Xie Yuanying nodded her head in cold, twisted satisfaction. Thank you. Thank you so much for handling this. The second the words left her mouth, she violently ripped the 4-line right out of her arm, took custody of the organ, packed her belongings, and frantically rushed back to Sucheng. Upon her arrival, every single massive outdoor LED billboard across Sucheng was blasting a video loop of Xie Yuanying's grand public apology. Shinshin, I love you. It breaks my heart that by the time I finally opened my eyes to this truth, it was already too late. I inflicted so much horrific, unpardonable trauma upon your soul. This public confession is a debt I profoundly owe you. I'm so deeply sorry, my love. Every single landmark we ever visited when we were together, and every act of pure devotion you ever performed for me back when you loved me, I'm going to painstakingly reenact and recreate them all, piece by piece. Look at your tree. Shinshin is now adorned with brand new vows of my eternal love. The lock on the lover's bridge has also been replaced with a pristine one. In our past, you were always the one selflessly praying for my happiness. Now, I have covered every branch with my deepest prayers for you. I have even successfully retrieved your stolen kidney and brought it back. I absolutely refuse to let it waste away inside that worthless piece of trash. If you fiercely despise me for aborting our flesh and blood, then please brutally beat me, curse me, or torture me however you see fit. I will willingly endure absolutely anything to atone for my horrific sins. I beg of you, please come back to me. On the screen, the once fiercely arrogant, high and mighty heiress was now dropped down on one knee, looking thoroughly broken and desperate. She held up a massive, glittering diamond ring in one hand, while her other hand clutched the medical cooler containing the harvested kidney. Staring at this dramatic spectacle, I didn't feel a single drop of warmth or emotion. I found the entire display completely hysterical, pathetic, and deeply repulsive. For all those agonizing years, she never harbored a single shred of genuine love for me. Yet, the exact moment Zhou Jiren's vile, true colors were exposed, she suddenly experienced a miraculous epiphany that she loved me all along. Such a fickle, cheap, and convenient brand of love is absolute garbage. Beside me, Su Mu's face twisted into an expression of profound, unadulterated disgust. Shinshin, we cannot let her keep your organ any longer. Holding it just defiles you. You're absolutely right. It looks like we are forced to finally confront her face to face, I muttered, knitting my brows in pure annoyance. Inside the private room, Xie Yuanying was pacing back and forth in a state of extreme anxiety. Her eyes nervously locked onto the medical box resting on the table. She knew utilizing my organ as leverage was completely vile and underhanded, but she was out of options. Su Mu had insulated and shielded me far too perfectly, robbing her of even the slightest opportunity to corner me in public. This toxic blackmail was the absolute only card she had left to force an audience with me. She fully acknowledged her monstrous mistakes, and she was prepared to beg for mercy until her throat bled. Xie Yuanying's entire body was visibly trembling, her face completely rigid and her lips tightly white-knuckled. Suddenly, the heavy double doors swung wide open. Su Mu and I calmly and deliberately stepped into the room, our expressions completely icy, detached, and devoid of any human warmth. "I am so sorry." The frantic apology had barely torn from Xie Yuanying's throat before I instantly and ruthlessly cut her off. "Save your breath. I didn't show up here today to listen to your pathetic excuses. The catastrophic, permanent damage has already been inflicted upon my life. No matter how many times you grovel or cry tears of blood, you will never be able to undo the horrific trauma you caused. I am strictly here to reclaim what belongs to me. Do not mistake this for forgiveness." My voice was terrifyingly calm, flat, and completely devoid of any emotional ripple. Hearing this, the faint glimmer of hope in Xie Yuanying's eyes instantly died out. A bitter, heartbreaking smile crept on her trembling lips. "Xinshin, outside of this kidney, do you truly despise me so much that you can't even stand the sight of my face? I know I shattered your soul. If you refuse to accept my apology, then please take your bloody revenge on me. Anything. Look, here is a sharp blade. Just go ahead and drive the blade straight into me. Even if I draw my absolute last breath by your hands, I will accept it with total willingness. At the very least, it is infinitely better than continuing to rot away like a hollow, soulless corpse. I desperately need you." As she shrieked, she lunged forward and aggressively forced the hilt into my grip. Fresh, crimson blood oozed from her palm, dripping down and violently staining the pavement below. Yet she didn't display a single fraction of physical agony, tightly locking her fingers over my hand and forcing me to plunge the serrated dagger deep in her own flesh. Witnessing this horrific spectacle unfold, I let out a feral, panicked roar. "Xie Yuanying, you have completely lost your goddamn mind." The blade was buried deep within her abdomen, causing a violent torrent of blood to continuously erupt from the wound. I frantically attempted to release my grip and abandon the weapon, but she pinned me down with manic strength, making it physically impossible to extract my hand. Su Mu's eyes instantaneously flashed with a lethal, razor-sharp malice. She delivered a devastating, blunt punch directly into Yuanying's face, and ruthlessly snapped her fingers back with a sickening crack, to forcefully break her suffocating grip on me. "Unclench your filthy hands from his body. He wants absolutely nothing to do with you, you psycho. If you're so desperate to kick the bucket, go do it alone. Don't you dare contaminate Pei Xinshin's hands with your pathetic, worthless demise." Mu aggressively snatched the hilt and twisted the dagger deeper into the flesh, causing the thick, dark blood to instantly gush out at an infinitely more catastrophic rate. Noticing that I was rapidly descending into an absolute state of frantic panic, she maintained complete composure, soothing me with a chilling calmness. "Relax, honey. Yuanying is perfectly fine. This is merely a superficial, minor puncture wound. There's absolutely zero chance she dies from this. The manipulative bitch is simply gambling her own flesh to see if you still harbor a single shred of pity for her." Hearing Su Mu's cold, calculating analysis, the explosive panic in my chest finally dissipated, staring down at Xie Yuanying with a gaze colder than absolute zero. "Stop running these pathetic, calculated mental games, Xie Yuanying. I will absolutely never grant you my forgiveness ever again. Moreover, your psychological framework doesn't harbor an ounce of genuine love for me. You are simply entirely unaccustomed to reality, completely unaccustomed to navigating life without my constant, high-tier care, taking care of your every whim. You don't need me, and you certainly don't love me, so snap the hell out of it." The absolute millisecond those syllables left my lips, I delivered a savage, high-impact slap across Xie Yuanying's face, forcefully snapping her consciousness back into reality. Clutching her bleeding abdominal wound, she erupted into an unhinged, chaotic laughter that was heavily saturated with an endless, devastating sorrow. "Pei Xinshin, I unironically love you with every fiber of my being, So why on earth won't you believe me? It hurts so absolute much. Why can't you look down upon me with that same divine, unconditional tenderness you showered me with in the past timeline? Can we please just reset the parameters and go back to how things used to be? Back when our destinies were completely inseparable. I desperately need you. Xie Yuanying pushed her physical anatomy to the absolute limit, frantically reaching her hand out toward my silhouette. But her vocal output grew increasingly faint and microscopic, with massive, critical blood loss accelerating through her system, compounded by a physical frame that hadn't even remotely recovered. Her biological functions finally collapsed, causing her to lose consciousness and completely black out on the spot. Watching her collapse, I didn't feel a single shred of pity, nor did I experience any toxic thrill of satisfying revenge. I simply reclaimed my medical cooler containing the kidney, took Sumyu by the hand, and walked out. Miu, I want to completely crush Xie Yuanying's spirit this time, so she will never possess the audacity to harass me again. My previous warnings were clearly far too lenient on her, which is exactly why she still thinks she can stage a public circus like this. I spoke with an icy detachment, wiping the stray blood splatters off my clothes. Sumyu nodded softly, tightly locking her arm in mine. No matter what you choose to do, I will stand by your side 100. Just promise me you will never backtrack in her life. Ultimately, I had no desire to actively drive her into an early grave. As we exited the building, I casually called emergency services to handle her medical crisis. The exact moment Xie Yuanying regained consciousness, her assistant frantically called her phone. CEO Xie, you need to return to headquarters immediately to handle this disaster. That illegitimate brother of yours has officially been released by Old Master Xie, and he is already aggressively plotting to usurp your position. Worse, Director Pei and the Su Group are systematically joining forces, ruthlessly squeezing our entire corporate market share. If you don't step in to manage this crisis right now, I'm terrified our entire empire will completely collapse. Xie Yuanying inhaled a sharp, ragged breath into her lungs. I'll be back shortly. Hanging up the phone, she was instantly consumed by a bottomless abyss of despair. No matter how close to death she came, I would never offer her a single drop of compassion. She had completely exhausted every single weapon in her pathetic arsenal. Yet my eyes remained locked solely and affectionately on Sumyu. Did she honestly think that by completely destroying Sumyu in business, she could somehow force me to look at her again? Xie Yuanying clutched onto that toxic delusional fantasy, like a dying lifeline, forcing her broken body out of the hospital bed. For several grueling months, she practically lived inside her corporate office, losing all track of when she had last even stepped foot inside her own home. Her physical appearance withered away until she looked shockingly emaciated and drained. Internal threats coupled with external enemies. Trying to salvage the sinking ship entirely on her own was an impossible nightmare. In the past, I was always the genius strategist bearing the heavy burdens of her empire. Now, the absolute only time Xie Yuanying could even catch a fleeting glimpse of me was across the cutthroat boardroom tables during high-stakes corporate bidding wars. My business acumen was absolute lethal poetry. After combining forces with Sumyu, our strategic synergy was completely flawless and unstoppable, driving our corporate empire to astronomical new heights of prosperity. It stood in stark. They suffered string after string of catastrophic bidding defeats, their executive leadership making one disastrously flawed decision after another. Major multi-million-dollar projects suffered severe logistical crises and imploded overnight. Xie Yuanying felt as if an unending avalanche of corporate nightmares continuously dogpiled onto her shoulders, suffocating the absolute life right out of her lungs. Trapped in a relentless, she no longer even possessed the luxury of time to obsessively miss me. Only in those silent, sudden moments of waking up in the dead of night would that agonizing, heart-wrenching pain relentlessly claw its way back. During a high-stakes corporate negotiation trip, Xie Yuanying was driving herself across the massive suspension bridge spanning the river, when her luxury vehicle suddenly suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure. The acceleration violently spiked out of nowhere, leaving the car completely out of control. With a deafening, metal-crunching crash, Xie Yuanying's car smashed brutally into the concrete dividing barrier, and her legs were instantly hit with a bone-shattering, excruciating wave of agony, before immediately going completely numb and losing all sensation. The vehicle veered wildly off course, careening straight off the bridge and plunging into the deep lake below. By the time she finally regained consciousness in the ICU, the attending physician delivered the devastating news that her legs were completely paralyzed, permanently crippled beyond any medical hope of recovery. She was forcefully thrown back into the dark, helpless days of her past. Except this time, I was no longer standing by her side to pull her out of the abyss. But honestly, things ending this way is for the absolute best. She will finally stop bothering me and ruining my peace. I have absolutely no business entangling my life with a pathetic, broken cripple.